Right. I don't think you guys can hear this at all. It's probably best that you can't hear it. I'm using Epidemic Sound. It's a pretty cool library of music. I was gonna kind of have it like in the background as I read, because it's a little boring to just read. Such a 21st century thing to say. It's a little boring to read. Right. So let me put this out of studio mode. Yeah, I said, fuck it. I'm gonna read the Dungeon Master's Guide. I watch a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games channels, and of them, one of the guys was reading the original. I think it was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the Player's Handbook, and it was written by Gary Gygax and all that stuff, and it was really compelling. Is maybe the wrong word, but it was a pretty cool read until it got to the math, and you're just like, whoa. Anyway, that's not why we're here today. I don't know if I'll keep on doing it. This is a pretty big book. Hey. And it's the 5th edition version. What I have on the screen is also the 5th edition version. That is anyflip.com. And you can, move through the book this way. As you can see. Even makes a little sound. One piece of note is it's missing one of the pictures in the very beginning. It looks like a bunch of adventurers hiding in Mechanus underneath those Emotrons up top, and it's this picture. Let's see if I can square that up, Jesus. Anyway, I'd never actually taken a look at that picture. It's really cool and very pertinent to the Richmond Fey game, because they're trying to get to Mechanus or Nirvana in that game. At any rate, so I'm going to try to keep up on this thing, and I'm going to read off of a book, because whatever. Okay. As is my custom, I have 3 different drinks. That's right. You got to stay hydrated or whatever. Cheers. Hell yeah. So this is West 6th Brewing's Oktoberfest. It is one of the only Oktoberfests I like. Alright. So I don't want to gloss over. I kind of feel bad just glossing over the credits. But I'm not going to read just a bunch of names. It'll be like reading the Bible or something. Like, Mike Merrill's begat Jeremy Crawford. But it's interesting to actually take a look at all this stuff, and all the people that work on a book of this nature. I'm making a book, the Dreadlore System book, and that's got one person, this guy, working on it. That's maybe not entirely true. I've had people help proofread and tried to give credit where credit's due, honestly. But for people to actually have it as their jobs, ostensibly making money, it just takes a shitload of people to make one of these books. And they have a load of words in them. I think the DMG is of the shorter ones, and it's around 320 some odd pages, including the index and everything. But this book is Hoss. It's not a normal, 6x9 book or even 10x7. I don't know what this one is, but it's big. It's like 14 inches or something. My point, it only has 300 pages, but if this was the size of a normal book, it'd be well over 500-600 pages. And that may be anecdotal, but if you're making a book, it's a thing. What I will say is, on the cover, Tyler Jacobson illustrates the Arklich Sararak. this guy. And if you don't know who a Sararak is, again, there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos that talk about this kind of stuff. But a Sararak, I believe, is the protege of Vecna. And everybody knows who Vecna is now. I think Return to the Tomb of Horrors, and Tomb of Horrors, maybe. A Sararak is, well, he's in there. Okay. Right. Table of contents, or just the contents. I don't think I've ever used the table of contents in this book. That might sound silly, but people that game, like a lot, you use the index. I mean, unless you're trying to learn the game, then you kind of go through it. But you kind of like flip past everything, get the mechanics, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Oh, that's how you do that thing. Cool. Index time. So it's interesting to look at this. It's in 3 parts. There's an introduction. Of course, the introduction it starts on page 4 and ends on page 6. So I think that's funny because, by 5th edition, they don't really have to introduce much. But I do find it interesting how few dungeon masters, few arbiters, few game masters actually ever read the D&G and how to, make a game. Part 1 looks like a world of your own, creating a multiverse. I think that's just the main rundown. The main rundown of Greyhawk or Planescape, just like Planescape Light, so the setting of D&D. I know Greyhawk is the main setting, but whatever. Part 2 has several chapters. That's where the bulk of the book seems to be. Creating adventures, which will be interesting, but I don't know how much is needed. That's about 15 pages. Creating non-player characters. I've never looked at that. I usually use online sources for NPC-generated stuff, if I want that stuff. Adventure environments, again, the same thing. Between adventures, this is talking about linking adventures, campaign tracking, recurring expensive downtime activities. The downtime activities might be interesting. When you're trying to pull a whole game together, that Chapter 6 of Part 2 might be pretty good. Chapter 7, Treasure, definitely have looked all through that, and it's probably the main reason I have this book. Part 3 is Running the Game. No one's looked at that. Chapter 9, Dungeon Master's Workshop. I mean, it's really good stuff. It's the DM, making sure the DM understands what the mechanics do and why they do it, so that you can inevitably house rule and ad hoc, because D20 insists on it. There's an argument to be made all systems do, but D&D definitely does. That's a contentious statement, I know. I just think it's funny that people think D20 is easy. It's just not. Anyway, I'll stop ranting about that. Appendix A is random dungeons. Thanks. Appendix B, monster lists. I didn't even know that existed. Maps. Dungeon Master inspiration. And then the index, of course, which is what I use most often. Wow. I'll not get anywhere near there. So let me flip the page. All right, so introduction. It's good to be the Dungeon Master. It's good to be king. Is it? Is it, though? I mean, it's cool. Anyway, not only... It's interesting how they use small caps for that first sentence. I didn't know that they did that. They obviously have a drop cap, which is really cool. That I mean, it's like a big old calligraphy thing, and then it small caps that first line. Which, again, I know this sounds rather pedantic, but, like, I straight up pay attention to this shit now. Because someone had to decide that, and then make it consistent. It's good to be the Dungeon Master. Not only do you get to tell fantastic stories about heroes, villains, monsters, and magic, but you also get to create the world in which these stories live. Whether you're running a D&D game already, or you think it's something you want to try, this book is for you. The Dungeon Master's Guide assumes that you know the basics of how to play the D&D tabletop role-playing game. If you haven't played before, you're fucked! The Dungeons & Dragons Starter Set is a great starting point for new players and DMs. I will actually agree with that. That's such a good product. This book has 2 important companions. The Player's Handbook, PHB, which contains the rules your players need to create characters and the rules you need to run the game. And the Monster Manual, which contains ready-to-use monsters to populate your D&D world. It's interesting how they say this. I would forgive it if it was like the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth, or first, second, third, fourth, or 4.5 version of D&D. Of course you need the Monster Manual. Your players demand it. Because they're always going to be like, there's no way that monster has that many, The PHB is absolutely fucking essential. You have to have the PHB, the Player's Handbook. I argue you could run this game with just the PHB. I mean, by the 5th edition, you kind of don't need the DMG. That's probably something... We'll see if I'm wrong. I've never read the whole thing, so... Okay. Also, side note, when people say, your book's too long, like the book you're creating, the tabletop role-playing game you're creating. Oh my god, it's 500 pages. And they wig out. This motherfucker is 300 pages, and it requires you to have 2 other 300-page books. It's 1,000 pages, my friends. And I looked up the word count. It's something like 1 million or 2 words. It's insane how much is in here. Plus art. The Dungeon Master, DM, is the creative force behind a D&D game. I beg to differ. Also, I believe DM is trademarked by, I guess, Hasbro now. The DM, although it doesn't have a TM. TM. The DM creates a world for the other players to explore, and also creates and runs adventures that drive the story. Interesting how they bolded adventures. That must matter. Is the DM the most creative force, or the creative force? I disagree with this. That might be a little bit of the old school revival that they're pulling in. Because this is 5th edition is kind of like it doesn't know what it is. Although it's great, but I digress. An adventure typically hinges on the successful completion of a quest. Okay? And can be as short as a single game session. Longer adventures might embroil players in great conflicts that require multiple game sessions to resolve. When strung together, these adventures form an ongoing campaign. A D&D campaign can include dozens of adventures and last for months or years. Yes, it can. A dungeon master gets to wear many hats. As the architect of a campaign, the DM creates adventures by placing monsters, traps, and treasures for the other players' characters, the adventurers, to discover. As a storyteller, interesting how they went to story now. As a storyteller, the DM helps the other players. The DM helps the other players visualize what's happening around them, improvising when the adventurers do something or go somewhere unexpected. As an actor, the DM plays the roles of the monsters and supporting characters, breathing life into them. And as a referee, the DM interprets the rules and decides when to abide by them and when to change them. It's interesting how it says the other players, because at this point, it's just talking about the DM. And the DM is a player, meaning the DM is playing the game too. They're just taking on the role of DM. It's interesting how it says As a referee, the DM interprets the rules and decides when to abide by them and when to change them. Players need to read that shit. Another anecdote, apparently in the original, I don't know if it was the first edition D&D, but definitely in the first or second versions of this game, the one that Gary Gygax wrote, he essentially tells the DM not to let the players read that book. I think it was the DMG. He's like, and I think the original player's book didn't actually have how to build characters. That could be complete bullshit, but I think it is. My point is, there's a bit of a mystique about being a DM that's lost when people rules lawyer. Because players, I think, should remind other players and have a responsibility to, remind the DM of the rules, of the standard rulings. But rules lawyering is a different animal. The book literally says it's up to the DM to decide when to use those rules. So that there is a rule is simply a guideline. You can say that 1,000 times in a game, and players will not. It doesn't work. Okay. Inventing, writing, storytelling, improvising, acting, refereeing. Without pay. Every DM handles these roles differently. Yes, they do. And you'll probably enjoy some more than others. It helps to remember that Dungeons and Dragons is a hobby. Thanks. Who wrote this? Who wrote the forward? There's so many people that work on this. Brand and marketing. Let's see. Art director's producer, Greg Bilsland. All right, Greg. And the editors, Scott Fitzgerald Gray, Michelle Carter, Chris Sims, Jennifer Clark Wilkes. Okay, I'm just gonna go for Bilsland. All right, dude. It's a hobby. It's all to your fucking job. It's just a game, guys. We just spend all our time fucking doing it. Doesn't matter though. All right. It helps to remember that D&D is a hobby, and being the DM should be fun. Focus on the aspects you enjoy, and downplay the rest. For example, if you don't like creating your own adventures, you can use published ones. Just buy some. You can also lean on the other players to help you with rules, mastery, and world building. That's actually fair. The D&D rules help you and the other players have a good time, but the rules aren't in charge. Really? You're the DM, and you are in charge of the game. They used a contraction there. Interesting. That said, your goal isn't to slaughter the adventurers, but to create a campaign world that revolves around their actions and decisions. A campaign world that revolves around their actions and decisions, and to keep your players coming back for more. If you're lucky, the events of your campaign will echo in the memories of your players long after the final game session is concluded. Well, what they do will definitely echo. How to use this book. This book is organized in 3 parts. The first part helps you decide what kind of campaign you'd like to run. The second part helps you create the adventures, the stories that will compose the campaign and keep the players entertained from one game session to the next. The last part helps you adjudicate the rules of the game and modify them to suit the style of your campaign. I find it interesting here that, as much as I've argued against this, it sounds like this is saying it actually is up to the DM to entertain the players, which I disagree with. But then again, who the fuck am I? All right. Every DM is the creator of his or her own campaign world. The guy's going to get in trouble for that. Whether you invent a world, adopt a world from a favorite movie or novel, or use a published setting for the D&D game, you make that world your own over the course of a campaign. Unless you play Star Wars, and then everyone just... The world where you set your campaign is one of the countless worlds that make up the D&D multiverse. A vast array of planes and worlds where adventures happen. Even if you're using an established world such as the Forgotten Realms, your campaign takes place in a sort of mirror universe of the official setting where Forgotten Realms novels, game products, and digital games are assumed to take place. The world is yours to change as you see fit, and yours to modify as you explore the consequences of the player's actions. Players' actions have consequences. Your world is more than just a backdrop for adventures. Like Middle-earth, Westeros. Interesting. Like Middle-earth, Westeros, and countless other fantasy worlds out there. When was this published? When was this published? Because you know it had to be after Game of Thrones got on TV. Or The Song of Ice and Fire. Excuse. First printing December 2014. You marketing people, where are you? Brand and marketing, Nathan Stewart. Who are you? Liz. I have no idea how to pronounce that word. Anyway, bunch of people. Liz. Drop in Westeros and Middle-earth. To shame. It's a place to which you can escape and witness fantasy stories unfold. A well-designed and well-run world seems to flow around the adventurers, so that they feel part of something instead of apart from it. Consistency is a key to a believable fictional world. When the adventurers go back into town for supplies, they should encounter the same NPCs they met before. Soon they'll learn the barkeep's name, and he or she will remember theirs as well. Once you've achieved this degree of consistency, you can provide an occasional change. If the adventurers come back to buy more horses at the stables, they might discover that the man who ran the place went back home to the large city over the hills, and now his niece runs the family business. That sort of change, one that has nothing to do with the adventurers directly, but one that they'll notice, makes the players feel as though their characters are part of a living world that changes and grows along with them. Okay. Part 1 of this book is all about inventing your world. Chapter 1 asks what type of game you want to run and helps you nail down a few important details about your world and its overarching conflicts. Chapter 2 helps you put your world in the greater context of the multiverse, expanding on the information presented in the PHB, to discuss the planes of existence and the gods and how you can put them together to serve the needs of your campaign. Whew. Still page 1. No wonder nobody reads this. Part 2, Master of Adventures. Whether you write your own adventures or use published ones, expect to invest preparation time beyond the hours you spend at the gaming table, because it's a hobby. You'll need to carve out some free time to exercise your creativity as you invent compelling plots which the players will ignore, create new NPCs which they'll immediately kill, craft encounters which they'll get mad at you at, and think of clever ways to foreshadow story events yet to come. Yeah, right. Part 2 of this book is devoted to helping you create and run great adventures. I wonder if any of these people have actually run great adventures. Chapter 3 covers the basic elements of a D&D adventure, and Chapter 4 helps you create memorable NPCs. Chapter 5 presents guidelines and advice for running adventures set in dungeons, the wilderness, and other locales, and Chapter 6 covers the time between adventures. Chapter 7 is all about treasure, magic items, and special rewards that help keep the players invested in your campaign. Okay. Master of Rules. Dungeons and Dragons isn't a head-to-head competition, but it needs someone who is impartial yet involved in the game to guarantee that everyone at the table plays by the rules. Okay. As the player who creates the game world and the adventures that take place within it, the DM is a natural fit to take on the referee role. So the DM is a player. It says this explicitly. I like that. As a referee, the DM acts as a mediator between the rules and the players. A player tells the DM what he or she wants to do, and the DM determines whether it is successful or not. The DM determines that, not the dice. In some cases, asking the player to make a die roll to determine success. And the DM determines whether it's successful or not. Boom. In some cases, asking the player to make a die roll to determine success. For example, if a player wants his or her character to take a swing at an orc, you say, why is that always the orcs? You say, make an attack roll while looking up the orc's armor class. The rules don't account for every possible situation that might arise during a typical D&D session. For example, a player might want his or her character to hurl a brazier full of hot coals into a monster's face. Whoa. How you determine the outcome of this action is up to you, the DM. You might tell the player to make a strength check while mentally setting the DC at 15. If the strength check is successful, you then determine how a face full of hot coals affects the monster. You might decide that it deals 1d4 fire damage and imposes disadvantage on the monster's attack rolls until the end of its next turn. You roll the damage die, or let the player do it, and the game continues. Sometimes mediating the rules means setting limits. If a player tells you, I want to run up and attack the orc, but the character doesn't have enough movement to reach the orc, you say, it's too far away to move up and still attack. What would you like to do instead? The player takes the information and comes up with a different plan. They don't argue, though, or give you that insolent look. I don't hate players. To referee the rules, you need to know them. You don't have to memorize this book or the PHB, but you should have a clear idea of their contents so that when a situation requires a ruling, you know where to find the proper reference. The PHB contains the main rules you need to play the game. Part 3 of this book offers a wealth of information to help you adjudicate the rules in a wide variety of situations. Chapter 8 presents advice for using attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws. It also includes options appropriate for certain playstyles and campaigns, including guidelines for using miniatures, a system for handling chase scenes, and rules for madness. If you like to create your own stuff, such as new monsters, races, and character backgrounds, Chapter 9 shows you how. That chapter also contains optional rules for unusual situations or playstyles, such as the use of firearms in a fantasy setting. I have used that section, Chapter 9, quite a bit, although I kind of disagree, which is, no surprise. Let's see. Oh, we're almost to part 1. That artwork is very good. I wonder who did that artwork. Let's see. Let me take a look at the artwork. You got on the cover. It says interior illustrators, and there's a load of people, but I don't know if it actually explicitly says on the page. Might be elsewhere. Oh well, I don't know. Anyway, I like the artwork. What you got there? You got like a dwarf, a halfling, dude with a beard, maybe a half-elf, and an elf. Huh. I bet is that a halfling? I guess it is a halfling. And they're in this like creepy-ass tower-looking thing. Oh, they're in the mines of Moria is where they are. Jesus. All right. Know your players. The success of a D&D game hinges on your ability to entertain. Oh, God, I hate it. On your ability to entertain the other players at the game table. Bullshit. Reminds me of the argument that the City of Doors sigil is pronounced sigil. You know what? That's also, I believe, in one of the books of Planescape. I mean, I'm almost positive. And I think it was, Tracy Hickman? I think it was Tracy Hickman that said it's sigil, it's not sigil. Because basically they wanted to be like, everything's quirky in sigil. So they're like, no, even though it's spelled S-I-G-I-L, it's not like the symbol. It's weird. I don't care. Sigil sounds stupid. Also, anyone who's run a game, I mean, anyone. I'm sure there's some DMs that are like, no, I gotta entertain my players, you know, especially if they're like your kids, or like, you know, 10 or 12 years old. God. Well, in Dreadlore, it does not say that. It explicitly says the opposite of that. Back to D&D. The success of a D&D game hinges on your ability to entertain the other players at the game table. Whereas their role is to create characters. Oh, it's so hard. The protagonists of the campaign. Breathe life into them. Really? They have responsibility? And help steer the campaign through their characters' actions. With impunity, your role is to keep the players and yourself interested and immersed in the world you've created, and to let their characters do awesome things. I think this is a contradictory paragraph. On the one hand, it's saying it's your job to entertain the players and to create the world, but it's their job to make actions to steer the campaign, which inevitably changes the world. And what I think right there you get that's a great microcosm isn't the right word. We're gonna go with it though. A great microcosm of why tabletop role-playing games, you know, in general D&D games, can go so wrong with the expectations, because it's not a clear expectation. Whereas the role is to create, so their role, the player's role, is to create characters, which are the protagonists, breathe life into them. Okay, so they have to make them interesting, or they're just playing them? Okay, you're breathing life into them. I'm assuming that means to make them interesting. And help steer the campaign through their characters' actions. So they're steering the campaign, they're affecting the game, they're breathing life into these characters they've created. But it's your job as the DM to entertain them and keep them coming back. And to keep it interesting. And also to let them do awesome things despite the world that you've created, but they get to steer. But it's all your fault. Knowing what your players enjoy most about the D&D game helps you create and run adventures that they will enjoy and remember. Once you know which of the following activities each player in your group enjoys the most, you can tailor adventures that satisfy your players' preferences as much as possible, thus keeping them engaged. It's a hobby. That's hilarious. What a bunch of assholes. Alright. Acting. Players who enjoy acting like getting into character and speaking in their characters' voices. Is it characters' when the apostrophe is after? Or is it characters? I think it's characters. Characters. Role players at heart. They enjoy social interactions with NPCs, monsters, and their fellow party members. Yeah. Engage players who like acting by giving them opportunities to develop their characters' personalities and backgrounds, allowing them to interact regularly with NPCs, adding role-playing elements to combat encounters, incorporating elements from their characters' backgrounds into your adventures. I feel like that's 101, dude, if you're going to play a role-playing game. I mean, I'm not trying to just dog this, but we can talk about it later. We can discuss later. Read the chat, dick. Sorry. I don't have the chat up. That's my bad. Let me open that shit up really quick. It's cause my my computer has trouble keeping up with all of the shit that's running. So, in an effort to make the stream smoother, that's why I don't really look at the chat too much. That's my bad. Hold on. Fuck. It's a long-ass password. Where's the chat box on this? Chat. Huh. It has not populated. There you go. I just logged in. See? Nothing in the chat. What can I do? Well, shit. Oh. Let's put this back here. Give me just a second. So that's good. I have no idea. I'm getting messages, just a second. Oh, thank you. Thank you for sending me the chat. Okay. Second edition stated that DM is God. No, that needs to be a circle jerk. DM should be entertained as well. I mean, you know, you and I completely agree. We've smoked cigars about this and had whiskey. 100%. I think it's one of the failings of 5th edition. And when I said at the beginning that I feel that 5th edition it kind of has a schizophrenic persona. Like it's trying to be the old school revival OSR stuff from like 2nd ed, and also the more new style gaming 3rd edition on, where it really cares about story, but then also has rules, but then you don't have to do the rules, but then you should. It's a broad approach. What can I say? Let me see if this works. Can you see this message, Chad? Okay, I'll jump back on there here in a minute. And hopefully... Oh, sweet. Awesome. Great. Awesome. All right, so I'll keep up the chat, and we can continue doing this. How is the audio, by the way? I'm trying to dick around with doing the audio and then also the frame rate to see if I can make it smoother, because I've messed up my OBS's deals. Okay. Exploring. Players who desire exploration want to experience the wonders that a fantasy world has to offer. They want to know what's around the next corner or hill. They also like to find hidden clues and treasure. That's more of that OSR feel. Engage players who like exploration by dropping clues that hint at things yet to come, letting them find things when they take the time to explore, providing rich descriptions of exciting environments, and using interesting maps and props. Giving monsters secrets to uncover. Giving monsters secrets to uncover or cultural details to learn. I think I know what they're saying there, but I think it's worded poorly. As in like when you engage with monsters, there's also secrets to uncover. Video's choppy? Yeah. Thanks, sir. Instigating. Interesting. Players who like to instigate action, I'll shoot it, I'll stab it, are eager to make things happen. You mean they're restless ADHD fucks, even if that means taking perilous risks. Alright. They would rather rush headlong into danger and face the consequences than face boredom. I hearken back to the section at the top, Know Your Players. Oh, god damn it. Engage players who like to instigate. That's awesome that it actually says instigating. Whew. Engage players who like to instigate by allowing them to affect their surroundings, because that's a good idea, including things in your adventures to tempt them. What? They're going to do it anyway. Letting their actions put the characters in a tight spot. It will always do that if you have consistency. Including encounters with the NPCs who are as feisty and unpredictable as they are. Okay, so if you've ever DM'd, you know that's like fucking... It's not the worst thing to do. It's not the worst thing to do. But the DM, that sounds a lot like antagonizing the players. Which I'm totally for, by the way. But it's like, nah, you should have an NPC who's as feisty and as much of an instigator and as unpredictable as an instigating player. So you create an NPC that's essentially the foil for the shitty player. If you're an instigating player, you're a shitty D&D player. Unless the game is about instigating, right? If it's about role play and OSR stuff where like you're exploring. So if it's about acting, if it's about exploring, you got an instigator in there. Like all they want to do is fuck around, rush headlong into things. Well, you can't. Then it doing that mitigates the role play and the world you're trying to build and the meaningful actions. If players are supposed to steer the campaign with their actions, and you allow an instigator to do that, then they fuck over everyone else. I mean, not every time. Of course there's exceptions to these rules. It's like the worst fucking player. Fighting. Players who enjoy fantasy combat like kicking the tar out of villains and monsters. Okay. They look for any excuse to start a fight, favoring bold action over careful deliberation. That sounds just like an instigator. Engage players who like fighting by springing unexpected combat encounters on them. Okay, I gotta stop there real quick. Action economy. So what you can do on a turn is a really big thing in tabletop games. And when I say tabletop, I'm talking about tabletop role-playing games. If you have 4 players, and then a DM, you wait around 15 minutes a turn. Like if you're in a big combat, and Chad, you can weigh in on this. A combat is going to take a minimum, like a full combat, right? 30 minutes to an hour. So, I mean, 4 hours goes by real quick if you're just springing combat encounters on people. Vividly describing the havoc their characters wreak with their attacks and spells, which you should do anyway. Including combat encounters with large numbers of weak monsters. Fuck that. Interrupting social interaction and exploration with combat. Again, All right. You can have large numbers of weak monsters, minions as they called them in 4th edition. I think that's fine, and there's multiple ways to run those, which I'm assuming this book actually covers. I think that if you're rolling dice for lots and lots and lots of minions, that becomes very boring. It becomes very board gamey. Which, if you all haven't figured out, obviously I am not neutral about this at all. I'm definitely much more of the acting and exploring type of player. The optimizing player. Players who enjoy... Oh, fuckers. It's a gearhead. It's fucking power gamer is what it should be called. Players who enjoy optimizing their characters' capabilities like to fine-tune their characters for peak combat performance by gaining levels, new features, and magic items. They welcome any opportunity to demonstrate their character's superiority. Character optimization. Go fuck yourself. Engage players who like optimization by kicking them out of your game. Or how about this? Telling them they can come back when they're ready to play, and then they vilify you for it years later. Not saying that's anybody I know. Ensuring steady access to new abilities and spells. Using desired magic items as adventure hooks. Okay? You should do that. Including encounters that let their characters shine. You should obviously do that. Providing quantifiable rewards like experience points for non-combat encounters. Okay, I think the book is just reaching at this point. Because you should do that for the acting, not the optimizing. The non-combat... engage players who like optimization. Oh, I see, they're getting XP, and so you're rewarding them for not being an optimizing fuck. Right. Problem solving. Back to the OSR. Players who want to solve problems like to scrutinize NPC motivations, untangle a villain's machinations, is it machinations? Yeah. Solve puzzles and come up with plans. Awesome. Engage players who like to solve problems by including encounters that emphasize problem solving. Thanks, DMG. Thank you. The fuck's your name? Who wrote this? Who's the actual writer? Editor. No, I want the writer. I'm just gonna blame the producer, Greg Billsland. By Island, Billsland, whatever. Thanks, Greg. Making sure an encounter advances the story in some way, it always should. Making their characters' actions help steer future events. Okay. Giving NPCs ideals, bonds, and flaws that the adventurers can exploit. Of course, duh. Part 1, Master of Worlds. Ugh. Let me jump on the chat really quick and answer some shite. Boop. Here's some really cool art. Look at that owl. And that... It's not a dragon. What is that called? Fuck. I got nothing. Chat says, oh yeah, combat is going to take a long time if the bad guys are cardboard cutouts that fight to the death no matter what. Truth. 100%. I mean, we've talked at length about this kind of stuff. Unless your bad guys just have a death wish, like why would they keep on fighting against superheroes? I mean, a level 1 D&D character. I know what do you call them? The optimizing players don't think that level 1 players are or level 1 characters are powerful, but they're superheroes. Like it's something like you can. I was reading the rules about the jumping rules. Go read the jumping rules. Anyway, it's like you can jump 3 feet vertically plus your strength modifier in feet. So let's say you have a strength of 14, so it's a +2. You can jump like fucking Mario. Like you can jump 5 feet in the air. Just No roll. You can just do it. That's what the PHB says. Pretty sure. That's level 1. Like a fighter who has an 18, he can jump 9 feet in the air. And if I'm wrong about that, tell me. Chad says, y'all got jumped by a whole gang of bandits, and the fight took 5 minutes because y'all played them off. Oh, yeah, he was running not Freeport, Saltmarsh. And, yeah, we got jumped. We were on our way back from the mansion on the hill, and all these goons came out. And we were like, oh, no, we haven't rested. We're fucked. And with some diplomacy and whatnot, those goons became our goon band. And, you know, that's on the DM, allowing the rules to facilitate the story and those decisions to steer the campaign in a direction that's actually fun, rather than just, well, the module says, you know? All right, Chapter 1, A World of Your Own. Your world is the setting for your campaign, the place where adventures happen. Even if you use an existing setting such as the Forgotten Realms. Why do they keep on throwing Forgotten Realms? Are they just like plugging Forgotten Realms? Did a game come out that year in 2014? Is that what was going on? Why not say Planescape? Why not say Saltmarsh? It becomes yours as you set your adventures there. Create characters to inhabit it, and make changes to it over the course of your campaign. This chapter is all about building your world and then creating campaign to take place in it. Okay, the big picture. This book, the PHB, and the Monster Manual present the default assumptions for how the worlds of D&D work. Among the established settings of D&D, the Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, Dragonlance, and Mystara. Don't stray very far from those. Go fuck yourself. Settings such as Dark Sun, Eberron, Ravenloft, Spelljammer, and Planescape venture further away from that baseline. What? Planescape's the bomb. It's the best. Also, Spelljammer should be really close to Planescape. As you create your own world, it's up to you to decide where on the spectrum you want your world to fall. Okay? Core assumptions. Alright, so this is basically Greyhawk. The rules of the game are based on the following core assumptions about the game world. Gods oversee the world. The gods are real and embody a variety of beliefs, with each god claiming dominion over an aspect of the world, such as war, forest, or the sea. Gods exert influence over the world by granting divine magic to their followers and sending signs and portents to guide them. Anyway, the follower of a god serves as an agent of that god in the world. The agent seeks to further the ideals of that god and defeat its rivals. While some folk might refuse to honor the gods, none could deny their existence. Whatever, dude. Chat says, no one wants to risk death, and NPCs don't know power levels. Every combatant should be a little cautious unless they are batshit crazy. Totally agreed. Or like a demon who doesn't care because when they get killed, they just go back to the abyss. You know, obviously they take it into account what they are. Or a vampire, you know, who's like, you can't kill me, dude. My shit's elsewhere. Much of the world is untamed. Wild regions abound. City-states, confederacies. I'm surprised they use that word. And kingdoms of various sizes dot the landscape. But beyond their borders, the wilds crowd in. People know the area they live in well. They've heard stories of other places from merchants and travelers, but few know what lies beyond the mountains or in the depths of the great forest unless they've been there themselves. The world is ancient. Empires rise and fall, leaving few places that have not been touched by imperial grandeur or decay. Doesn't that contradict what it just said about the world being untamed? War, I guess it's all not tamed at the same time. War, time, and natural forces eventually claim the mortal world, leaving it rich with the places of adventure and mystery. Ancient civilizations and their knowledge survive in legends, magic items, and their ruins. Chaos and evil often follow an empire's collapse. Conflict shapes the world's history. Powerful individuals strive to make their mark on the world, and factions of like-minded individuals can alter the course of history. Factions include religions led by charismatic prophets, kingdoms ruled by lasting dynasties, and shadowy societies that seek to master long-lost magic, but never will. The old god never rises. The influence of such factions waxes and wanes as they compete with each other for power. For power! Some seek to preserve the world and usher in a golden age, like the fascists. Others strive toward evil ends, like the fascists, seeking to rule the world with an iron fist. Still others seek goals that range from the practical to the esoteric, such as the accumulation of material wealth, like real life, or the resurrection of a dead god, like real life. Whatever their goals, these factions inevitably collide, creating conflict that can steer the world's fate. The world is magical, which is why it's fucked. Practitioners of magic are relatively few in number. Right, just every fucking D&D game. But they leave evidence of their crafts everywhere. The magic can be as innocuous and commonplace as a potion that heals wounds to something much more rare and impressive, such as a levitating tower or a stone golem guarding the gates of a city. Beyond the realms of civilization are caches of magic, as well as magically constructed dungeons inhabited by monsters created by magic, cursed by magic, or endowed with magical abilities. But it's your world, so don't stray too far. In creating your campaign world, it helps to start with the core assumptions and consider how your setting might change them. The subsequent sections of this chapter address each element and give details on how to flesh out your world with gods, factions, and so forth. The assumptions sketched out above aren't carved in stone. They aren't stoned. They inspire exciting D&D worlds full of adventure, but they're not the only set of assumptions that can do so. You can build an interesting campaign concept by altering one or more of those core assumptions, just as well-established D&D worlds have done. Ask yourself, what if the standard assumptions weren't true in my world? The world is a mundane place. What if magic is rare and dangerous, and even adventurers have limited or no access to it? What if your campaign is set in a version of our own world's history? All right. Have you ever ran a game? Have you ever run a game? I ran yesterday. Have you ever run a game of D&D? You know, high fantasy, as in like everything it just said about the world being untamed and the world's ancient and conflict and all this stuff. Have you ever run a game where you said, hey guys, it's going to be low magic, all right? It's going to be low magic. What immediately precipitates or follows that? That's right. Lots of bitching. Or, oh yeah, cool. So real low magic. So like Lord of the Rings, right? Like low magic, cool. And then you find like that one motherfucker or those two motherfuckers who are optimizing or instigators, right? Who like just have the +1 sword. And you're like, I said it was low magic. Or the fucking gearhead friend of yours who's like, no, I don't have magic. I'm just a shadow monster who has spell-like abilities. They're not magic though. It doesn't work. I mean, you can play D20, of course. You can, modify any setting you want to. But like, if you just think about it, to say that adventurers are limited, they have limited spells or no access to magic. You cut out magic items because they don't have access to it, and you cut out how many of the core playable classes. Like, straight up, only martial classes. Oddly enough, Richmond Fae, the game I'm running, basically are just martial classes. And my point is, like, that is very difficult to do and play this game. Just using the D20 set of rules, you can do it, sure, but it's like playing a Star Wars game without the Force, or any mention of it. Like, the Force is a part of Star Wars. You don't have to have a bunch of Jedi running around, but not only Jedi use the Force. This is a rant. This is a total rant that I can go on. Okay. The world is new. What if your world's new, and the characters are the first of a long line of heroes? The adventurers might be champions of the first great empires, such as the empires of Netheril and Cormanther in the Forgotten Realms. The fucking Forgotten Realms setting! Lord Almighty, what is with this? Tell me something else. I don't want the Forgotten Realms. All right, forget them. Cheap, low-hanging fruit. The world is known. What if the world is completely charted and mapped, right down to the "here there be dragons" notations? What if great empires cover huge stretches of countryside with clearly defined borders between them? The 5 nations of the Eberron setting were once part of a great empire, and magically aided travel between its cities is commonplace. Like the Stargate. Monsters are uncommon. What if monsters are rare and terrifying? In the Ravenloft setting, horrific domains are governed by monstrous rulers. The populace lives in perpetual terror of these dark lords and their evil minions. But other monsters rarely trouble people's daily lives. That's not fucking true. Is that true? Chad, is that true? Every Ravenloft game I've been in, there's been evil shit at night every single time. It's like playing like Trevor Belmont or Simon Belmont in Castlevania. You go outside at night, you're fucked. Monsters are uncommon. What if monsters... Well, I just said that. Magic is everywhere. What if every town is ruled by a powerful wizard? As it should be if you have magic, unless there's a reason you don't. What if magic item shops are common, like every fucking player wants? The Eberron setting makes the use of magic an everyday occurrence, as magical flying ships and trains carry travelers from one great city to another. You know what other setting does that? Planescape. Gods inhabit the land or are entirely absent. I prefer the former. Well, actually, both are fine, but I prefer the former. What if kind of like Princess Mononoke. What if the gods regularly walk the earth? What if the characters can challenge them and seize their power? Or what if the gods are remote and even angels never make contact with mortals? In the Dark Sun setting, the gods are extremely distant, perhaps non-existent. And clerics rely instead on elemental power for the magic, so it's just pomp. Okay. Right. The fucking trees will eat you in Ravenloft. But monsters are rare, apparently. Maybe this is just the Eberron setting? Is that what it is? No, it says Ravenloft. This is just wrong. Gods of your world, Appendix B of the Player's Handbook. You know, you better have that PHB. Presents a number of pantheons, loose groupings of deities not united by a single doctrine or philosophy, for use in your game, including the gods of established D&D worlds and fantasy historical pantheons. You can adopt, that's just, I'm offended by that. Historical pantheons are not necessarily fantasy. You can adopt one of these pantheons for your campaign, or pick and choose deities and ideas from them as you please. See a sample pantheon in this section for an example. Basically, we wash our hands of saying anything concrete. As far as the game's rules are concerned, it doesn't matter if your world has hundreds of deities or a church devoted to a single god. In rules terms, clerics choose domains, not deities, so your world can associate domains with deities in any way you choose. Ergo, your players won't give a fuck. Loose pantheons, the ones that are real loose? Yeah. I didn't switch the page. Sorry, my bad. Just a second. Boof. Alright. Boop. Maybe the original, it was supposed to be a surprise and a big secret that Ravenloft is a living nightmare. Until, everyone bought the book. I've actually never run Ravenloft. I came real close, But I instead did a show, theater, a show in the theater. Yeah, in 5e, everybody knows. Dread realms, though, like in the world of Greyhawk or Planescape, does the average Burke, the average person, know about the Dread realms? Is that like, does every outsider know, or is it still esoteric knowledge? Loose pantheons, pantheones. I think. Let me drop this really quick. Drop this. Right. Swing. There we go. Dropped frames, 75.3%. Jesus. Yeah. My it's got, I'm gonna go to right now. It's 2-second interval, 1 frame per second, and then the bit rate is really slow. Did the video freeze up? Restream.io is the service that I use. Oh, it looks like it's still on. The service that I use, they're actually really good. They have like a little preview of how the stream looks, but again, it's going through my computer, so it's kind of hard to do. I need a better setup. I need to get one of those Stream Deck things. Right. Let me get some Vasa really quick. No, just those in the realms know what that they're screwed. Yeah, that would suck. Being in Ravenloft and being like, yeah, this blows. I like it better the other way, though. I like the idea that that the people in the waking dream, the waking nightmare, like Hotel California style, aren't completely aware that they're in the Dread Realms. I mean, I kind of get the idea with like Strahd knowing, but I think it's kind of better that, I think it'd be more of a nightmare like Alzheimer's style, that Strahd, when everything resets, Strahd doesn't know, and he has to find out again. Anyway, it asks a lot of players. It's kind of like when you play Warhammer 40k, like the tabletop version. Not the minis version, which I've never played because I'm not, a person who paints minis. When you're playing 40k, it's like all the players know, the Emperor's dead, like a zombie, and like it's all bullshit, but like your characters are not supposed to know, right? Like you kind of have to go along with it. And that's a big ask. All right. Give me just a second. I'm going to go grab another beer. Continue reading, because I'm probably going to skip ahead a little bit. I'll be back in like a minute and a half. Oh, Oktoberfest. All right. I think I can potentially upgrade my stream real quick with plugging in hardwire. So bear with my technical difficulties. I think this is actually plugged in. Chad says, I like the old way too, but you can't get players to play along with the shared illusion. Right. And that is why they fail. I don't think that I can change. Yeah, I'm losing tons of drop frames. Or I'm dropping tons of frames. It's like 77% drop frames. I wonder if I can change it in stream. I don't think I can. Video. Can't change that. That's fine. I can lower the kilobytes per second. So maybe that'll help. Hopefully this won't destroy everything. I guess I could do a longer interval on the keyframe too. Let's try that and see if it helps. And let me take a look at hopefully it doesn't like stream what I'm doing. That'd be hilarious. Not that there's anything on this computer. Let's see, I'm gonna see if the hard line is in. So it is connected. Hopefully that'll help. I mean, I'm still losing shitloads of frames. I think one of the main problems is it's difficult to have the web browser open and be running OBS on this computer. Let me see if I can jump over here and do it. Bear with me. Boom. Okay, I'm gonna shut this down really quick on the chat, so yeah. And that might help a little bit. Except, let's see, stream.io. Now, if you take a look there on that page, you can see the Dawn War Deities, which I don't know what the Dawn War is, but I think it's silly that Asmodeus or Asmodeus is a god. I think it's silly. Let's see. Hopefully this helps with the frame rate. But my internet blows, so. Right. And I may actually need to stop the stream and then restart it. Let's see. Looks like it's all, dang, it's all like, it's all stopped and I've got like a double chin. Oh, god damn, it's good. Hey, Domney, what's going on, baby? All right. Let's see. 77.6% drop frame. Lord, it's so bad. I need to get one of those stream decks, like I was saying. I can lower the bit rate again, but you don't want to go too low, because then it looks like asshole. Like really, really bad. I'll go down to 2,000 and see what that does. And hopefully it'll help. Let's see. I mean, I'm only getting like a 1600, 1700 bit rate anyway. So I guess it's not that big of a deal. All right. So, this might kill the stream. Oh, did it put me back on? Holy shit. Did that actually work? No way. Wow! Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, now I'm on the hard line. Doesn't look like it's helping at all. Alright, well the audio's fine, so we'll do with that. I'll try not to move around so much. Gods of your own world. Oh, I already read that. Loose pantheons. The loose kind. Salty, just sultry, lascivious pantheons. Most D&D worlds have a loose pantheon of gods. Drop friend 0, that's pretty sweet. That either means that I am seriously on or am seriously screwed. A multitude of deities rule the various aspects of existence, variously cooperating with and competing against one another to administer the affairs of the universe. Okay. People gather in public shrines to worship gods of life and wisdom, or meet in hidden places to venerate gods of deception or destruction. Never understood that exactly. Why? I mean, if the gods of destruction and deception are just as prevalent as the gods of life and wisdom, why would they meet in hidden places? Also, if you think about it, like the god of deception, wouldn't that god appear as a good guy? Because they're a god of deception. I think this is like in a Socratic or like Platonic story or discourse. Pretty sure. Like the idea that like if you're really, really good at deception, everyone's going to think you're a really good person because that's the most profitable. Like, it's something I don't understand. Anyway, whatever. Let me see this. Is the video cutting in and out? Oh, it looks better? Oh, nice. Sweet. All right, my little deal is giving me hell, so let's see if I can just do... I wonder if I can do a chat overlay. I had a chat overlay there for a minute, but it just didn't work. I don't think I have it on this. All right, I'm just going to go. Each deity in a pantheon has a portfolio and is responsible for advancing that portfolio. They all work in an office, see? In the Greyhawk setting, Heronius is a god of... Heronius is a god of valor who calls clerics and paladins to his service and encourages them to spread the ideals of honorable warfare, chivalry, and justice in society. Even in the midst of his everlasting war with his brother Hexter, god of war and tyranny, Heronius promotes his own portfolio, war fought nobly and in the cause of justice. He'll win. People in most D&D worlds are polytheistic. Ooh. Oh, wait. I know what that means. Honoring deities of their own and acknowledging pantheons of other cultures. How fucking woke. I'm not sorry. Individuals pay homage to various gods, regardless of alignment. Fucking pagans. In the Forgotten Realms. The Forgotten Realms. Oh my god. Maybe I'm just ignorant. Also, it's ironic it's called the Forgotten Realms because they won't let me forget. A person might propitiate, ooh, that's a good fucking word, might propitiate Umberlee before setting out to sea. Join a communal feast to celebrate Shantae at harvest time, and pray to Malar before going hunting. I think they lifted Malar from Maya, but that's just me. Some individuals feel a calling to a particular deity service and claim that god is a patron. Or a matron, come on now. Particularly devoted individuals become priests by setting up a shrine or helping to staff a holy site. Otherwise, they're fucking, not walking the talk. Much more rarely, those who feel such a calling become clerics or paladins, invested with the responsibility of true divine power. But these aren't players, are they? Are they players? I guess the ones that are very rare, like adventurers, heroes, are rare in this game, right? Because it's only the rare people that do this. Anyway, I understand it's plastic, but all right. Shrines and temples serve as community gathering points for religious rites and festivals. Thanks, D&D. Priests at such sites relate stories of the gods, teach the ethics of their patron deities, offer advice and blessings. Basically, they're priests. Okay. Cities in large town can host several temples dedicated to blah. To quickly build a pantheon for your world, create a single god for each of the 8 domains available to clerics. Death, knowledge, life, light, nature, tempest, trickery, and war. You can invent names and personalities. You can make all this shit if you want. I'm going to skip over that because honestly it's just fucking boring. Ooh. Yeah. I'm not going to read the table. Other religious systems. I'm gonna jump over the example because it mentions the player's handbook in 4th edition, and I refuse. Okay, other religious systems. In your campaign, you can create pantheons of gods who are closely linked to a single religion. Monotheistic religions worship of a single deity. Dualistic systems centered on 2 opposing deities or forces. Mystery cults involving personal devotion to a single deity, usually as part of a pantheon system. Animistic religions revering the spirit's inherent nature, or even forces and philosophies that don't center on deities. Okay. To my idea of Star Wars. People that use the Force, I mean, they're wizards. They're space wizards. But the Force is everywhere. The way the Force is described, I know I've just jumped onto a tangent, but about 20 minutes ago I was talking about this. The Force is everywhere. The way it's described in the original movies, and I'm not talking about the midi-chlorians movies, I'm talking about the original movies, when Yoda describes it to Luke, what the Force is. When Obi-Wan describes it to Luke, what the Force is. They don't say, some people can use this shit and do magic. They don't say that. They say the Force is everywhere. It's life. It's brought on by life. It's fate. And there are some people that can tap into it, but everyone's attached to it, or almost everyone is attached to it. I'm sure there's Star Wars lore where shit's not attached to it. The point is, though, Force apologetics and retcons aside, the idea of the Force in Star Wars, if you remove the Force, you're not playing Star Wars. You're not talking about Star Wars. Because that's like gravity in the universe. It's a part of the physics. It's part of the game. A part of the story. So you have to deal with it some way. You don't have to have a bunch of wizards, space wizards flying around, but people being moved by the Force, knowing to go down that way rather than going that way, having a gut feeling, all that stuff. That's explained in Star Wars with the Force. So it talks about other religious systems and says, even forces and philosophies that don't center on deities, I'm heavily reminded of playing like a Star Wars game using D20, which is a terrible idea. Saga Edition does it pretty well, ironically, until it gets into force powers. You know what's really great for it, though? Dreadlore. Also Star Wars D6, which is arguably my favorite game. Jacob says, I think chat is delayed. Seems like my comments are hitting like 5 minutes after I post it. You said that. Yeah, it's right around 5 minutes. Oh, actually, I just saw it. So, Chad says, pretty sure that Forgotten Realms is the main setting for the modules that they're selling for 5e. Well, that makes sense. They're promoting the hell out of what they're selling. Let's see. At Jacob, post a comment real quick, and we'll see how long it takes. Yeah, as it buffers, which has to do with both of our internets, but definitely mine. It's going to attempt to, it's going to be a longer delay because my internet is not good. That said, it does say that I have 0 dropped frames, which is amazing. I'm surprised. All right, so I sent that comment at 5:45:23. So we'll see when Jacob gets it and when he sends back and all that stuff. Okay. Tight Pantheons. I like them tight. In contrast to a loose pantheon, a tight pantheon focuses on a single religion whose teachings and edicts embrace a small group of deities. Followers of a tight pantheon might favor one of its member deities over another. It was seconds for your last post. So I just got it? Well, I just got what Chad says. That wasn't Jacob. Okay. But they respect all the deities and honor them with sacrifices and prayers appropriate. So that's kind of like in Dreadlore. You don't see Jacob's because he's on YouTube and not Twitch. So in Dreadlore, the Pantheon, it's called the Brilliant Octet, and there's actually 8 of them. And you kind of, if you're a character in the setting of Craster, which is the setting for Dreadlore, although you can apply it to other settings, if you're in Craster, you might not favor one of the Pantheon, but you kind of just favor the Brilliant Octet. Okay. The key trait to a tight pantheon is that its worshippers embrace a single ethos or dogma that includes all the deities, the gods of the tight pantheon. I wonder what it was. Was it Greg Bisland who was like Bill's Land, who was like, no, we're gonna call it a tight pantheon. That's funny. Tight pantheons. It's just funny. All right. The gods of the tight pantheon work as one to protect and guide their followers. You can think of a tight pantheon as similar to a family. 1 or 2 deities who lead the pantheon serve as parent figures, with the rest serving as patrons of important aspects of the culture that worships the pantheon. A single temple honors all members of the pantheon. Most tight pantheons have 1 or more aberrant gods. So it's basically the Norse pantheon. Okay. Actually, it totally, yeah. The Norse deities serve as an example of a tight pantheon. Odin is the pantheon's leader and father figure. Deities such as Thor, Tyr's cool as shit. Tyr and Freya embody important aspects of Norse culture. Meanwhile, Loki and his devotees lurk in the shadows, sometimes aiding the other deities and sometimes working against them with the pantheon's enemies. I do feel like that Loki gets a bad rap because of Marvel and, well, D&D. These stories are supposed to teach you stuff. And Loki definitely gets the short end of the stick sometimes. Quite literally, other times. All right. Mystery cults. A mystery cult. What could that be? Is a secretive religious organization based on a ritual of initiation in which the initiate is mystically identified with a god or a handful of related gods. Mystery cults are intensely personal, concerned with the initiate's relationship with the divine. That sounds a lot like a religion, I know. Sometimes a mystery cult is a type of worship within a pantheon. It acknowledges the myths and rituals of the pantheon, but presents its own myths and rites as primary, and all will be burned if you don't go to church. You know, the mystery cult church, not real church. All right. For instance, a secretive order of monks might immerse themselves in a mystical relationship to a god who's part of a broadly worshipped pantheon. Yeah. The mystery cult emphasizes the history of its god, which it symbolically reenacted in its initiation ritual. Whew! This is rough. The foundation myth of a mystery cult is usually simple and often involves a god's death and rising, or a journey to the underworld and a return. Mystery cults, just call it Christianity. Mystery cults, or an Abrahamic religion, often revere sun and moon deities and agricultural deities, gods whose portfolios reflect the cycles of nature. Never mind, that has nothing to do with what I just said. Interesting, bottom right table. Divine rank. I actually don't know how 5th edition deals with divine rank. I just kind of make it up. The divine beings of the multiverse are often categorized according to their cosmic power. Some gods are worshipped on multiple worlds and have a different rank on each world, depending on their influence there. Greater deities are beyond mortal understanding. They can't be summoned, and they are almost always removed from direct involvement in mortal affairs. On very rare occasions, they manifest avatars similar to lesser deities, but slaying a greater god's avatar has no effect on the god itself. Basically, plot armor for gods. I mean, it's not just plot armor, but it is plot armor. Lesser deities are embodied somewhere in the planes. This is the problem with D&D. It doesn't. If you gotta have the planes, you gotta have the planes. Lesser deities are embodied somewhere in the planes. Some lesser deities live in the material plane, as does the unicorn goddess Luru of the Forgotten Realms. Oh my god. And the Titanic shark god. There's a shark god? Sekola, revered by the Sahagin. I know who the Sahagin are because of Chad, because of Saltmarsh. Others live on the outer planes, as Lolth does in the Abyss. Such deities can be encountered by mortals, and you don't want to go there. Quasi Deities have a divine origin, but they don't hear or answer prayers, grant spells to clerics, or control aspects of mortal life. They're still immensely powerful beings, and in theory, they could ascend to godhood if they amassed enough worshippers. Quasi-deities fall into three categories: demigods, titans, and vestiges. It's interesting that they brought vestiges back from, I learned about them in 3rd edition. Then again, I basically learned 3rd edition D&D, then went to 2nd ed, then D&D next, then 5th edition. All right. Demigods are born from the union of a deity and a mortal being. They have some divine attributes, but their mortal parentage makes them the weakest quasi-deities. Titans are the divine creation of deities. They might be birthed from the union of two deities, manufactured on a divine forge, born from the blood spilled by a god, or otherwise brought about through divine will or substance. I think in Planescape, because I know there's various versions of Planescape as well, there's a limited number, a finite number of Titans, I think. Vestiges are deities who have lost nearly all their worshippers and are considered dead. From the mortal perspective, esoteric rituals can sometimes contact these beings and draw on their latent power. Vestiges, I think, are the coolest of the deities. Yeah. In Dreadlore, the Dead God. That I say it out loud doesn't sound very creative. He's got many names. Old Blackroot. We'll call him Old Blackroot. Is like a vestige. The cult's ritual of initiation follows the pattern of its foundation myth. Neophytes retrace the god's footsteps in order to share the god's ultimate fate. But aren't the gods dead? In the case of dying and rising gods, the symbolic death of the initiate represents the idea of death to the old life and rebirth into a transformed existence. Again, that kind of reminds me of something else. Initiates are born into a new life. Truly saved, remaining in the world of mortal affairs, but feeling elevated to a higher sphere of righteousness. The initiate is promised a place in the god's realm after death, but also experiences new meaning in life. It's just a hobby, guys. Just a hobby. Let me switch the thing really quick. Swing. Monotheism. You preaching that monotheist? Theo? We are not getting through this whole chapter. It's massive. I keep on talking, too. Alright. Man. Do we want to read through this? Monotheism, I know what monotheism is. I've Wikipedia'd it. I know exactly what it is. Dualism, good and bad, polar opposites. Animism, it's like Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke. Any sort of Eastern style religion is typically animist, which you can yell at me if you want on that. Forces and philosophies, that's what we're going to go for. Not all divine powers need to be derived from deities. In some campaigns, believers hold enough conviction in their ideas about the universe that they gain magical power from that conviction. This is kind of like a paladin. Or in Planescape, you can do that. Is it the Sign of One? Signers, I think. In other campaigns, impersonal forces of nature or magic replace the gods by granting powers to mortals attuned to them. Just as druids and rangers can gain their spell ability from the force of nature, rather than a deity. Blah, blah, blah. We all know this. So basically you believe hard, and so you get good stuff. Where does your power come from? My belief in myself. Humanoids and the gods. When it comes to the gods, humans exhibit a far wider range of beliefs and institution than other races do. Why? Because humans are better. In many D&D settings, orcs, elves, dwarves, goblins, and other humanoids have tight pantheons. It is expected that an orc will worship Grumsh, or one of the handful of subordinate deities. In comparison, humanity embraces a staggering variety of deities. Each human culture might have its own array of gods. In most D&D settings, there is no single god that can claim to have created humanity. Thus, the human proclivity for building institutions extends to religion. A single charismatic prophet can convert an entire kingdom to the worship of a new god. With that prophet's death, the religion might wax or wane, or the prophet's followers might turn against one another and found several competing religions, or denominations, or cults. In comparison, religion in Dwarven society is set in stone. The dwarves of the Forgotten Realms identify Moradin as their creator. While individual dwarves might follow the gods, as a culture, the dwarves are pledged to Moradin and the pantheon he leads. I think it's just laziness. It's not laziness. It's fine to say, hey, look, this is the way it is. This is what people do in the world. These people are this way. Because we're abstracting reality anyway, and we kind of only have humans to deal with in our world, that have religion. So I understand a game system saying, Yo, humans are the, I'll use the metaphor again, or the analogy again, the Mario in Super Mario Brothers 2. You know, we're the jack of all trades and you can be whatever you want. But I tend to like settings that are more definitive. You can always have exceptions, but having a tight pantheon, I think is just cool. Like in 40K, there's a tight pantheon. You know what? Anyway, does nature have a pantheon? Is it its own pantheon? I don't know. All right. I'm gonna move on from humans and the gods, because it's saying if you're human, you can do whatever the fuck you want. You know, I think it would have been better off if it just said that. Ooh, we get some maps. Mapping your campaign. When creating the world where your campaign takes place, you'll want a map. You can buy it, the Forgotten Realms map. You can take one or two approaches with it, top down or bottom up. Which one are you? Some DMs like to start at the top, creating the big picture of the world. Creating the big picture of the world at the start of the campaign by having a map that shows whole continents, and then zooming in on smaller areas. Other DMs prefer to go the opposite direction, starting with a small campaign area that is mapped at a province or kingdom scale, then zooming out as adventurers take the characters into new territory. Ergo, they don't know what's beyond the territory until it matters. I think that's okay. Have a map for where you're going to be. Whichever approach you take, hexes work well for mapping outdoor environments, where travel can go in any direction, and calculating distance might be important. A single sheet of hex paper with 5 hexes to the inch is ideal for most maps. Use a scale for your map that's best suited, blah, 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 blah. It's interesting how they use hexes, because normally we use the squares. But hexes might be just as fine. On hexes, I guess the benefit is there's kind of no difference of diagonals versus going coordinate planes. As in, like, if you're using squares, then you go 5 feet every square, but if you go diagonals, it's a 5, 10, 5, 10, 5, 10. Is it the same thing in hexes, or is it all 5? I don't actually know. Provincial scale. For the most detailed areas of your world, use a province scale where each hex represents 1 mile. Holy shit, this is actually how to build a map. Whew. I'm gonna move through some of this. I think this is very referential material that if you give a shit, you should read it. Oh man, I did say I'm gonna read the DMG, and no one reads it for this reason. All right, I'm reading it. Let's do it. Let me beer first. Okay, here we go. Province scale. For the most detailed areas of your world, use a province scale where each hex represents 1 mile. A full-page map of this scale represents an area that can be covered in 1 day's travel in any direction, from the center of the map, assuming clear terrain. Whoa, this just got all kinds of D&D. 1 day's travel in any direction from the center of the map. So a map is at least 2 days. Unless you're going diagonally and whatever. Okay. Assuming clear terrain. As such, province scale is a useful scale for mapping a campaign starting area. See creating a campaign later in this chapter, or any location where you expect to track the adventurer's movement in hours rather than days. Okay. The ground cover of an area this size will include broad stretches of one predominant terrain type, broken up by other isolated terrain types. A settled region mapped at the scale might have 1 town and 8 to 12 villages or farming hamlets. A wilder region might have only a single keep or no settlements at all. You can also indicate the extent of the cleared farmland that surrounds each city or town on a province scale map. This will show as a belt a few hexes wide surrounding each town or village. Okay? Even small villages farm most of the arable land within a mile or two. Those humans causing climate change. Each hex is 1 mile. Whew. On a king, this is like someone who like if you actually mapped out your shit. Kingdom scale. On a kingdom scale, each hex represents 6 miles. Why? They love the number 6. A map at this scale covers a large region, about the size of Great Britain, or half the size of the state of California. That's plenty of room for adventuring. The first step of mapping a region at this scale is to sketch out the coastlines and any major bodies of water in the area. Is the region landlocked or on a coast? A coastal region might include islands offshore, and a landlocked area might include an inland sea or major lakes. Alternatively, the region could consist of a single large island or an isthmus or peninsula with multiple coastlines. Next, sketch in any major mountain ranges. Foothills form a transition between the mountains and lowlands, and broad patches of gentle hills might dot the region. That leaves the rest of your map for relatively flat terrain. Grasslands, forests, swamps, and the like. Place these elements as you see fit. Map out the courses of any rivers that flow through the area. Rivers are born in mountains, or inland areas that see a lot of rainfall, when winding down to the nearest major body of water that doesn't require the river to cross over higher elevation. Tributaries join rivers as they grow larger and move toward a lake or the sea. Finally, place the major towns and cities of the region. At this scale, you don't need to worry about small towns and villages, or mapping every belt of farmland. Even so, a settled region this size might easily have 8 to 12 cities or towns to put on the map. The color green is green. Forests grow from the ground up. Think about weather patterns. The terrain gets hotter in the day than it does the night. Jesus. Continent scale. Oh, God. For mapping a whole continent, use a scale where 1 hex represents 60 miles. At this scale, you can't see more than the shape of coastlines. The biggest mountain ranges, major rivers, huge lakes, and political boundaries. A map at this scale is best for showing how multiple kingdom scale maps fit together, rather than tracking the movement of adventurers day by day. Fuck you, DMG! I'll do what I want! My whole game is in 1 hex! The same process you use for mapping a region at kingdom scale works for mapping a whole continent. Oh, you mean they don't have a whole section on continent scale, you fucks? A continent might have 8 to 12 large cities that deserve a place on the map, most likely major trade centers in the capitals of kingdoms. God. Combining scales. Oh, it's the worst. Whichever scale you start with, it's easy to zoom in or out on your maps. At continent scale, 1 hex represents the same area as 10 kingdom scale hexes. Okay, 2 cities that are 3 hexes, or 180 miles apart, on your continent map would be 30 hexes apart on your kingdom map, and might define the opposite ends of the region you're detailing. At kingdom scale, 1 hex equals 6 province scale hexes. So it's easy to put the region covered by your province scale map into the center of a kingdom scale map and create interesting areas around it. Duh! You know, I think this would all have been a lot better had they just had, like, a graph with, like, if you've ever looked up on Google, like, different page sizes, I don't know why you would, but if you build games, then you do. Like, what the fuck is A4? What the fuck is A3? Or, you know, you get where I'm going. It'll have like this map, and it looks like the golden triangle, kind of. Like, it shows you this graphic of the sizes in comparison with each other. And I think all of that could have been condensed into a graphic that's just said, here's the bullet points, they're in relation this way, and this is why. Settlements. The places where people live. You know, a settlement. Bustling cities, prosperous towns, and tiny villages. Well, like where the Smurfs lived. Nestled among miles of farmland. Help define the nature of civilization in your world. A single settlement, a home base for your adventurers, is a great place to start a campaign and begin your world building. Consider the following questions as you create any settlement in your world. Where's the tavern? That's really the only question you need to ask. So where's the tavern, and how long does it take to get to the dungeon? Or whatever, we'll say dungeon in quotes. It's good to have a map. I'm not trying to say it doesn't. Like, again, to throw the Saltmarsh game that Chad ran, we can also call it the Dwarf game. The map was insanely useful. But he didn't show us the whole map. He drew it out, the parts we knew. He drew it on this cool paper, aged it, and we had to figure out all the glyphs and everything. It was very cool. As in, it made the map useful, rather than, so, let me, where do I take the next long rest? All right. Here's your questions, ladies and gents, for settlements. What purpose does it serve in your game? That's a good one. How big is it? And who lives there? Yeah? What does it look, smell, and sound like? Does anyone actually do this? Who governs it? Who else holds power? Is it part of a larger state? What are its defenses? Where do characters go to find the goods and services they need? What temples and other organizations feature prominently? What fantastic elements distinguish it from an ordinary town? What should the characters care about the settlement? Why should the characters care about the settlement? Because you're fucking there, man. It's where the story is. The guidelines in this section are here to help you build the settlement you want for whatever purpose you have in mind. Disregard any advice here that runs counter to your vision for a settlement. Oh, dear God. All right. The mind-numbing minutia of world-building advice. Purpose. I gotta stand up really quick. Ugh. Get some blood in the legs. I suggest you all do the same. We're going deep. We're going real deep. We're going balls deep. Purpose. A settlement exists primarily to facilitate the story and fun of your campaign. Okay? Other than that point, the settlement's purpose determines the amount of detail you put into it. Wait, what? Other than that point, the settlement's purpose determines the amount of detail you put into it. Okay. Create only the features of settlement that you know you'll need, along with notes on general features. Then allow the place to grow organically as the adventurers interact with more and more of it, keeping notes on new places you invent. This sounds contrary to what it literally just said in these bullet points. AKA wing it, which I would also suggest. Have an idea, have a plug for why it's in the game, why are you describing shit that doesn't matter? Like if there's a room off to the side, we go in it, we spend time in it. What's in there? Nothing. Why is there a room there? Right? Just say, oh, the kitchen's over there. There's nothing in there. You can tell. All right. Local color. A settlement might serve as a place where the characters stop to rest and to buy supplies. A settlement of this sort needs no more than a brief description. Yeah, we went into town. We got our shit. Include the settlement's name, decide how big it is, add a dash of flavor. Quote, the smell of the local tanneries never lifts from this town. And let the adventurers get on with their business. The history of the inn where the characters spend the night, the mannerisms of the shopkeeper they buy supplies from. You can add this level of detail, but you don't have to. If the characters return to the same settlement, start adding these local features so it begins to feel a little more like a home base, albeit a temporary one. Let the settlement develop as the need arises. I disagree with this. Chad mentioned in the chat NPCs that are two-dimensional. I don't think you should have those. Personally. But, again, I'm shamelessly plugging Dreadlore because it's my stream and my game. I went at it from a different angle. You've got notable NPCs. So these are noteworthy NPCs. They have a purpose. They have a few traits that tell you kind of like how they respond to different situations. That's three-dimensional. You don't have to have their whole backstories. Beyond that, you have narrative NPCs, which are a part of the narrative and they affect the narrative, and they should be fleshed out. And then you have extras, which are like the barkeep, who has a name and a general disposition. That's the closest you get to a two-dimensional NPC. Yes, there are people in town. No, they don't all need names. I understand that. But if you're going to be if the players, or the PCs, I should say, are going to be interacting with a person, like there's an actual in-game interaction, I think you need more than it's the barkeep and they serve you beer. Because otherwise, why are you taking up game time with it? I go get a beer. Cool, you do. You know? Home base. A settlement gives the adventurers a place to live, train, and recuperate between adventurers. Yeah, until the home base finds out they're murder hobos. An entire campaign can center on a particular town or city. Such a settlement is the launching pad from which the characters go out into the wider world. From which... It's interesting how they phrase this sort of prose. It's wild. I pay attention to it now, and I didn't before. Designed well, a home base can hold a special place in the adventurers' hearts, particularly if they care about one or more NPCs who live there. Which they should, if the NPCs matter. To make a home base come alive, you'll need to invest some time fleshing out the details. But the players can help you with that work. Ask them to tell you a bit about mentors, family members, and other important people in their characters' lives. Feel free to add to and modify what they give you, but you'll start with a solid foundation of the non-player characters' NPCs, who are important to the characters. Let the players describe where and how their characters spend their time. A favorite tavern, library, or temple, perhaps. Using these NPCs and locations as a starting point, flesh out the settlement's cast of characters. Detail its leadership, including law enforcement. Include characters who can provide information, such as sages, soothsayers, librarians, and observant vagabonds who play D&D. Priests can provide spellcasting as well as information. Of course! My priest can. Make note of merchants who might regularly interact with the adventurers and perhaps compete with one another for the party's business. That's actually a good idea. Think about the people who run the adventurers' favorite tavern. Is it annoying me saying adventurers? Is it even right? Someone tell me. And then add a handful of wild cards. A shady dealer. A mad prophet. Just pissed off. That's a joke. A retired mercenary. Definitely the bartender. A drunken rake. I like that rake thing. Or anyone else who adds a dash of adventure and intrigue to your campaign. Adventure site. A village harboring a secret cult of devil worshippers. Why not? Why would they not be? A town controlled by a guild of were-rats. That's straight out of Ravenloft, I think. A city conquered, or some, maybe I'm thinking of were-ravens? Anyway. A city conquered by a hobgoblin army. That's pretty cool. That'd actually be a really cool, I'm sure it's been done 1,000 times. Hobgoblins are so cool. The more that I've gotten, I've used them, because I'm looking for like a challenge, whatever, like a challenge 5 or 6 or whatever. Like all the NPCs are fucking hobgoblin captains, right? Or their stats. They're a really cool society. I think they'd be a really cool game there. You have like a dwarf game, have like a fucking hobgoblin game. Like you're all hobgoblins rolling through like mercenaries. It'd be badass. I might run that. Who wants to play? All right. Let me know in the chat. All right. These settlements aren't merely rest stops, but locations where adventures unfold. In a settlement that doubles as an adventure location, detail the intended adventure areas, such as towers and warehouses. Okay. For an event-based adventure, note the NPCs who play a part in the adventure. This work is adventure preparation as much as it is world building, and the cast of characters you develop for adventure, including allies, patrons, enemies, and extras, can become recurring figures in your campaign. Thanks, D&D. Size. This is actually pretty good shit. We're finally to something that I give a damn about. Because you wouldn't think about it unless you start building, a town. And I bet it has some statistics in here. But how big are towns? Like, realistically, let's say you got a group of adventurers who's like, you got 4 people, and they're like 8th level. Those motherfuckers can dominate a town. Like by the stats, just, you can go by averages and say, okay, well, every 20 attacks, someone's going to roll a 20 of, the puny minion guards. And they're gonna deal some damage. So how many people do you need to take on an adventuring party of 8th level characters? You need a fuckload. They need to have terrain. They need to have layer actions if they're in their home turf. If you're going like by the book, because otherwise they just get wrecked. Anyway, these stats are good, I think. Settlement stats. Okay. Yeah, right. Size. Most settlements in a D&D world are villages clustered around a larger town or city. Farming villages supply the town or population or city population with food in exchange for goods the farmers can't produce themselves. Towns and cities are the seats of the nobles, who govern the surrounding area and who carry the responsibility for defending the villages from attack. Occasionally, a local lord or lady lives in a keep or fortress with no nearby town or city. So this is just feudalism. There you go. Basically, it's fucking Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. The village. Population, up to about 1,000. What is that? 1,000 divided by 20. It's 50. So if all 1,000 of them attack the players, they hit 50 times, dealing like what? Like an average of 6 damage. I mean, you do the math there. Like, the entire village can't take on a group of 8th level characters before being murdered. Like one fireball, man. Okay. Government. A noble, usually not a resident, rules the village with an appointed agent, a reeve, in residence to adjudicate disputes and collect taxes. So basically it's Robin Hood. Defense. The reeve might have a small force of soldiers. Bitches. Otherwise, the village relies on a citizen militia. Way better idea. Commerce. Basic supplies are readily available, possibly from an inn or a trading post. Other goods are available from traveling merchants. When I say it's a good idea to have a citizen militia, I think you should have that and a small force of soldiers. Because the soldiers, you can actually give them levels. The militia, you might have a couple people that have levels, but really, numbers are how you do stuff. I'll say this about attacking players. If you've got a mob of 50, like, they can take on a group of 8th level characters. Assuming they don't get fireballed. They can do this by mobbing them. So the fighter can't swing because there's literally, 10 people on the person. Even an strength 18 dude isn't stronger than 10 strength 10 people. Could be wrong on the math of that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Let's see. Commerce, right, did that. Organizations. A village might contain 1 or 2 temples or shrines, but few or no other organizations. Sorry, y'all, you can't buy magic. Most settlements are agricultural villages, supporting themselves and nearby towns or cities with crops and meat. Villagers produce food in one way or another. Yeah, they do. If not by tending the crops, then supporting those who do by shoeing horses, weaving clothes, milling grain, and the like. The goods they produce feed their families and supply trade with nearby settlements. A village's population is dispersed around a large area of land. Farmers live on their land, which spreads them widely around the village center. At the heart of the village, a handful of structure cluster together. A well, a marketplace, a small temple or two, a gathering place, and perhaps an inn for travelers where they are going to go. A town. Population up to about 6,000. Now, if I'm right, it's something like 3% of a population usually is in the armed forces. So, in the village, that's like 30. Is that right? I think it's 1% or 3%, something like that. All right. Government, a resident noble rules and appoints a lord mayor to oversee administration. An elected town council represents the interests of the middle class. So there's a middle class in feudalism, which is weird. That's weird. All right. Defense. The noble commands a sizable army of professional soldiers, as well as personal guards. So times 6, you're talking about 180. Like, in a town of up to about 6,000, if you have more than 100 or 200 military, you have a very militaristic society. And that's a pretty good population. Just say a third are young, like super young, a third are old. So you're talking about a third of that. So 2,000 people are adults. Let's make it 3,000. Let's say it's 50%. 3,000 people. Is everyone able to fight? Men and women and everything in between? Let's say it is, since, it's D&D, and why not? How many want to be in the military? If you have a very militaristic town, you could have like half. They either do civil service at some age, or they do military for a few years, like all of Europe and like everywhere in the world, but just a few places. Still, it's only a percentage of 3,000. Let's call it 1,000 are actually ever in that. So of a population of 6,000, like 500 to 1,000, maybe. And it's like Spartan society. Okay. Commerce. Basic supplies are readily available, though exotic goods and services are harder to find. Inns and taverns support travelers. I wish that it was more explicit here. Exotic goods. Organizations. The town contains several temples, as well as various merchant guilds and other organizations. Towns are major trade centers, situated where important industries and reliable trade routes enabled the population to grow. Interesting how it doesn't mention water yet. These settlements rely on commerce, the import of raw materials and food from surrounding villages, and the export of crafted items to those villages, as well as to other towns and cities. A town's population is more diverse than that of most villages. Towns arise where roads intersect waterways, at the meeting of major land trade routes, around strategic defensive locations, or near significant mines or similar natural resources. Okay. The city. Population, up to about 25,000. No, 25, 26, whatever it takes. Government. A resident noble presides, with several other nobles sharing responsibilities for surrounding areas and government functions. One such noble is the Lord Mayor, who oversees the city administration. An elected city council represents An elected city council represents the middle class and might hold more actual power than the Lord Mayor. Other groups serve as important power centers as well. I mean, they're conflating a whole lot of different ideas here. I see down to the bottom right, it talks about government and immediately mentions feudal society. It's interesting they call it the middle class because that implies there's a working class. Merchants and that sort of thing, which of course there are. And I know that occurred. It's kind of like the Elizabethan period, I guess, is kind of where D&D, the Renaissance and such, where it kind of exists and lives. I guess it's okay. Let's see. It's just interesting that they're elected, like, as if there's a separation between, like, as if the lords, the ruling class, literally the nobles, are not running everything. Defense. The city supports an army of professional soldiers, guards, and town watch. Each noble in residence maintains a small force of personal bodyguards. Well, that makes sense. Professional soldiers. See, I feel like it should have gone country or city-state, and then gone down to cities and all that. Maybe city is city-state. Like, but really you're talking about, there needs to be a king or a queen if you're going feudal. Like, otherwise, why do you have nobles? Like, there's going to be one who's in charge. Anyway. Commerce. Almost any goods or services are readily available. Many inns and taverns support travelers. Well, I disagree with this. Organizations, a multitude of temples, guilds, and other organizations, some of which hold significant power in city affairs, can be found within the city's walls. Yeah, the commerce I just had an issue with. It's not about the city and the population that dictates what's around and the services. It's the geography. Cities are cradles of civilization. Their larger populations require considerable support from both surrounding villages and trade routes, so they're rare, okay? Right. Cities typically thrive in areas where large expanses of fertile, arable land surround a location accessible to trade, almost always on a navigable waterway. Cities almost always have walls, and the stages of a city's growth are easily identified by the expansions of the walls beyond the central core, the planet core. These internal walls naturally divide the city into wards, neighborhoods defined by specific features, such as the walls, which have their own representatives on the city council and their own noble administrators. Again, I guess it's general. Cities that hold more than 25,000 people are extremely rare. Metropolises such as Waterdeep in the Forgotten Fucking Realms, Sharn in Eberron, and the Free City of Greyhawk stand as vital beacons of civilization in the D&D world. Fine. Whatever. Fine. I'm saying 25,000 people. I wonder how big London was in like 1500, something like that. I wonder if they're just basing all of this off Renaissance stuff. Atmosphere. What do the adventurers first notice as they approach or enter a settlement? The smell! The towering wall bristling with soldiers, the beggars with hands outstretched, pleading for aid outside the gate, Los Angeles. The noisy hubbub of merchants and buyers thronging the market square. The overpowering stench of manure. It's like they watched Braveheart once. Sensory details help bring a settlement to life and vividly communicate its personality to your players. Settle on a defining factor that sums up a settlement's personality and extrapolate from there. Maybe a city's built around canals like the real-world Venice. That key element suggests a wealth of sensory details. The sight of colorful boats floating on muddy waters. The sound of lapping waves and perhaps singing gondoliers. The smells of the fish. Ooh, yes. And waste polluting the water. No. You don't gotta lump fish with the waste, but you should. The feel of humidity. It's interesting how they didn't say "and" here, so it's improper English. The feel of humidity. Or perhaps the city is shrouded in fog much of the time, and you describe the tendrils of cold mist reaching through every crack and cranny, and the muffled sounds of hooves on cobblestones, the cold air with the smell of rain and a sense of mystery and lurking danger, England. Or London. The climate and terrain of a settlement's environment, its origin and inhabitants, its government and political position, and its commercial importance all have a bearing on its overall atmosphere. A city nestled against the edge of a jungle has a very different feel than one on the edge of the desert. Elf and dwarf cities present a different aesthetic. Clearly identifiable. Wow, that was a wild word. Clearly identifiable, in contrast to human-built ones. Soldiers patrol the streets to quell any hint of dissent in a city ruled by a tyrant, while a city fostering the early system of democracy might boast an open-air market where philosophical ideas are traded as freely as produce. Interesting simile. All the possible combinations of these factors can inspire endless variety in the settlements of your campaign world. Government. There ain't no government in my D&D. You can't tread on my government D&D. In the feudal society common in most D&D worlds, power and authority are concentrated in towns and cities. Nobles hold authority over the settlements where they live and the surrounding lands. They collect taxes from the populace, which they use for public building projects, to pay the soldiery, and to support a comfortable lifestyle for themselves. Although nobles often bear or have considerable hereditary wealth, there we go. In exchange, they promise to protect their citizens from threats such as orc marauders, hobgoblin armies, and roving human bandits. Way to pigeonhole orcs, man. What's wrong with being a marauder, man? Nobles appoint officers as their agents in villages to supervise the collection of taxes and serve as judges in disputes and criminal trials. But what about the elected officials? These reeves, sheriffs, or bailiffs are commoners native to the villages they govern, chosen for their positions because they already hold the respect of their fellow citizens. Within towns and cities, lords share authority and administrative responsibility with lesser nobles, usually their own relatives, and also with representatives of the middle class, such as traders and artisans. A lord mayor of noble birth is appointed to the head of the town. A lord mayor of noble birth is appointed to head the town or city council to perform the same administrative functions that reeves carry out in villages. Why don't they rise up? I mean, also, does it talk about magic yet? Because what if the city council has magic? Like, what makes you the lord? You know, it was divine. Like, either people did something really great and so they gained power, and then it was hereditary, or they were like, God did it. Like, what is it here? I just think that it would benefit from saying that. All right. The council consists of representatives elected by the middle class. What about the poor people? What the fuck's the middle class here? I guess people that own their own businesses, which is not the middle class. Not really. Is it? Only foolish nobles ignore the wishes of their councils, since the economic power of the middle class is often more important to the prosperity of a town or city than the hereditary authority of the nobility. Again, I think it's conflating things. The larger, and the problem with that is if you don't understand how those systems work, then, or why they make sense, I'm not saying they're right, I'm saying why they operate and continue to operate for so long, then if you don't have research in that, as in why does your town operate the way it does? You don't have to have a noble and a middle class and a burgomeister or something. Like, you know? The larger a settlement, the more likely that other individuals or organizations hold significant power there as well. Even in a village, a popular individual, a wise elder, or a well-liked farmer can wield more influence than the appointed reeve, and a wise reeve avoids making enemy of such a person. In towns and cities, the same power might lie in the hands of a prominent temple, a guild independent of the council, or an individual with magical power. Okay, so it does get around to it. Forms of government. For those of you that missed U.S. history, you didn't learn anything in it anyway. But here's a whole bunch of civil stuff. It does have a cool table here. Forms of government. A settlement rarely stands alone. A given town or city might be a theocratic city-state or a prosperous, free city governed by a merchant council. More likely, it's part of a feudal kingdom, a bureaucratic empire, or a remote realm ruled by an iron-fisted tyrant. Consider how your settlement fits into the bigger picture of your world or region, who rules its ruler, and what other settlements might also lie under its control. This is a cool little table here to decide, kind of like randomly, what your the town is. That's pretty neat. And then over on the other page, the sample hierarchy of noble titles is is interesting. It's interesting they have, just speaking of that on the next page, the sample hierarchy of noble titles, how they have emperor, empress, and then underneath that king, queen, because normally the king, queen would become the duke and the duchess, or the earl, or something, or the Kaganite, you know, the little king, that kind of thing. Anyway. Yeah, those are really cool. All right, typical and fantastical forms of government are described below. Choose one or randomly determine a form of government for a nation or city from the forms of government table. Whew! Lord Almighty. All right, so we're at 2.5 hours. I'm gonna finish up. Let me see. Do I want to get into the rest of this stuff? Because you have currency, which I actually would like to talk about the currency. And it gets into languages, which I think is one of the best parts of D&D is all the languages. Which it looks like they have like just a little on it, because no one wants to deal with it, basically. Let's see. We'll go for a little more. I'm gonna go on a short break real quick. So I'll be back, I think, in 5 minutes. Let me put this up really fast. Break time. Oh shit. TR. Boom. Be back in 5 minutes. Right after these messages. Boom. Let's see if I can move that down here. There we go. Let me close that really fast. I normally have music. I think I can actually break out some music while I break down. This is why I need a break. Let me break this out really fast. Let me break this out. Get it? No? Okay. Let's see. Let's do this song. Probably can't hear it. I'll be back. Whoa, that was really on time. I wonder if there's another one. Wow. Let's play this one. Come on, iTunes, don't slap me now. Oh, I bet it has to download. Alright, I'm gonna grab some coffee. Be right back. Yeah, that song. All right. Y'all still there? Okay. Let me blow that up. So, if you made it this far, thanks. If you just jumped on, thanks for jumping on. I'm just a few pages into the Dungeon Master's Guide of D&D's Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Wow. The Dungeon Master's Guide of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Some of it's been real interesting. Some of it's been a little boring. But there have been some good references, or not references. There are definitely some parts that would be good to reference. I think this Forms of Government is real interesting. The page before, let me jump back there real quick. This page, page 17 and 16, talking about cities. I think that's real nice. The mapping your campaign just seems honestly kind of silly. Rolling all the way back to this is a pretty good list of deities, but there's better lists of deities. really everything up until this point. Well, actually, let me move back to. I'm going to do a little review here. The art's awesome. Look at that. Look at that right there. That's so cool. I mean, it's a Mines of Moria, like I said before. And this is just, like, whoever did this art is the bomb. I wish I got this person to do my art. I do have some really good artists, though, working on the Dreadlord book. Tim Roberts and Dalton Anderson specifically, and then Cameron White is doing some, and their style is cool. It's very sketchy, black and white, real neat. Anyway, this is a really good page too. I think it's a really good page for DMs. I think that its advice is not good at all. I think it's shitty advice. It's mediocre. It doesn't take a stance. It's spineless. But, which I would prefer for D&D to actually do what it used to do, which like back in the Gary Gygax days, and Tracy Hickman, I think, was a part of it at that point still, where they were like, nah, this is the way it is. Like, stop fucking doing that. This is it. This is what we're going for. And it wasn't just, owned by a mega corporation. That said, it's a good page to reference because you can point to it and say, here are the expectations for players of this game, including DMs. Of course, the first page, I would say reference this if you're a DM and you have problematic players, because it basically says, yo, you're the DM, dude. Like, it's up to you if you even use the rules. But then it just goes back on it the next page. Yeah. Let's see. I skipped over a lot of this because I thought it was honestly just obvious. That said, I had not looked at that graphic. That is badass. It's so cool because you see this big statue. I think it's a statue with a brazier. And then this dude, this adventurer, all Tomb Raider style. And I like how the watercolor splashes around it. That's really good artwork. And the design of that, as in placing that, that's hard to do. I'm doing it right now, and it's hard to do. Okay. Unfortunately, I have not found a page yet that actually shows who specifically has done all these things, these artworks. Okay, this is actually a page that I really want to get into, the currency. Let's see. I'm not so happy about talking about the different forms of government, but I'm going to. Because why not? It's interesting. It's not talking about... It'll say democracy, but it won't say communism. Which I know is... it's a little different. I just... Like, it's going to talk about communism, but it won't use the word... which... Especially... I don't know, I can't judge D&D 5.5 yet. I actually think it probably will be pretty good. Just because 3.5, I think, was an improvement on 3.0. And 3.75, I'm talking about D&D editions, which is essentially Pathfinder. I mean, that like fixes almost all the problems with 3.5. While still maintaining that feel, which is cool. And I know that there's a second ed and a 2.5. Chad's told me a bunch about it. Hi, Nikki! You're listening to me read a D&D book. I applaud you, Nikki. Oh, Twitch didn't go up. I wonder why. Hi, Nikki. Let's see if that... wonder why it dropped me off Twitch. Oh, there we go. Nikki, I actually posted a comment, but it didn't go to Twitch until just now. Hello. When are we gonna smoke cigars again? I've got way better cigars than I had last time. Although I think we smoked your old cigars, so it doesn't matter. But I'll bring some. We'll smoke them. No one should smoke, by the way. Smoking's bad for you. Okay. I'm on the autocracy, which is the left page. And we'll see if, one, this gets it right. And two, if it's just obvious. Maybe we'll learn something. How about that? Autocracy. One hereditary ruler wields absolute power. Like an autocrat. A hereditary ruler. I'm not entirely certain that's what an autocracy is. The autocrat either is supported by a well-developed bureaucracy or military, or stands as the only authority in an otherwise anarchic society. The dynastic ruler could be immortal or undead, Ander and Karnath, two kingdoms in the Eberron campaign setting, have autocrats with royal blood in their veins, whereas Queen Orala of Andar relies on wizards and spies to enforce her will. Caius, the vampire king of Karnath, has a formidable army of living and undead soldiers under his command. I did not like that very much. I do want to set a little bit of the record straight because I can be wrong. Okay, right. So an autocracy is actually, and I'm just going to look these up rather than riff on them. Government by a single person having unlimited power or a despot. That's what an autocracy is. So it's not necessarily hereditary. It's not what an autocracy is. A bureaucracy. It's interesting they put that in there. Various departments compose the government, each responsible for an aspect of rule. The department heads, ministers, or secretaries answer to a figurehead, autocrat, or council. How about a prime minister or a president? Generalissimo? I mean, it's just a bureaucracy is. It's not a form of government. It's the way that government is set up. It's way as in like a communist government has bureaucracy, loads of it, in fact, right? I kind of get what they're going for. Like that's wrong, I think. Yeah, I don't think it's a form of government, but maybe I'm wrong. Confederacy. Each individual city or town within the Confederacy governs itself, but all contribute to a league or federation that promotes, at least in theory, the common good for all members. Just one moment, I have to take this call. Sorry, I gotta go rescue the cat really fast. I'll be right back. All right, cat has been rescued. Let's see. Yep. TEP. That's what I want. iPhone. I want TEP, not YEP. Let's see. All right, memes galore. So remove that. So my Ember mug, which is this guy. Boom. I don't know if you guys have ever seen one of these. It has this like light on the front. There you go. It's called an Ember mug. These things are awesome. My buddies Ryan Cox and Judith Cox bought me this, and it's spectacular. Like, it keeps your tea or your coffee or whatever hot, warm. I'll say after like 6 months to maybe a year, the battery element starts to lose charge. You know, you pretty much have to keep it on the base, but you can keep it off the base for maybe 10 to 20 minutes. At any rate, your coffee doesn't cool down. It's awesome. It's awesome. So, and I'm not getting sponsored by Ember. I do think it's kind of bullshit that you cannot change out that battery. Like, you can't buy replacements for it. That's fucking bullshit. But, cool idea. Okay. Confederacy. Each individual city or town within the Confederacy governs itself, but all contribute to a league or federation that promotes, at least in theory, the common good of all member states. Conditions and attitudes toward the central government vary from place to place within the Confederacy. The Lord's Alliance in the Forgotten Realms, setting as a loose confederacy of cities, while the Morar holds in the Eberron campaign, setting as a confederacy of all allied dwarf clans. So I find it interesting that they're willing to put the Confederacy in there and not communism, especially nowadays, because everyone associates the Confederacy with, you know, the Civil War in America and with racism and slavery and such, which was a huge part of it. I think proponents of the Confederacy might not want to say that. They want to look at something else, but it obviously was a part of it. That said, it wasn't all of it. You know, you have to do the give and take. And the Confederation of States, United States in the beginning, before the Civil War and all that stuff, was essentially a confederacy. You know, I get what they're doing there. I think that's a pretty good definition, and it's a very cool game as well, because you have all these city states essentially, like I think it's Agamemnon in the Trojan War and stuff. I think they had a confederacy, something similar to it. History buffs can correct me greatly on this. Democracy. Citizens or their elected representatives. Not a democracy, they're gay. Citizens or their elected representatives determine the laws in a democracy. A bureaucracy or military carries out the day-to-day work of government with positions filled through open elections. Democracy. So a republic, it does have republic down here. Elected representatives determine the laws in a democracy. I don't actually think that's true. A democratic republic, that's true, because it's a republic and a democracy. So the officials are elected by the populace, and they have a senate, which I think is what the republic is. I don't think you necessarily, in a republic, I don't think you necessarily vote on your senators. And in a democracy, like an actual just democracy, I don't think you necessarily have representatives. Maybe you do, but I don't think you necessarily do. Dictatorship. which is essentially an autocracy, but this has something else. One supreme ruler holds absolute authority by his or her rule, but his or her rule isn't necessarily dynastic. In other respects, this resembles an autocracy. In the Greyhawk campaign setting, a half-demon named Euse is the dictator of a conquered land that bears his name. I didn't think an autocracy was actually dynastic. Maybe it is. I don't think it is. Yeah, like coup d'etat and stuff, that's an autocrat. A dictatorship and an autocracy, those are the same thing. D&D is just sort of changing that. Feudalism. Feudalism. Resistance is feudalism. No? The typical government of Europe in the Middle Ages, a feudalistic society consists of layers of lords and vassals. The vassals provide soldiers or scutage, payment in lieu of military service to the lords, who in turn promise protection to their vassals. It's interesting how it really didn't explain any of that. I think it's okay to not explain it, but as they've been so pedantic earlier in like talking about monotheism, it's interesting that it's like they just wanted to fill out pages or something. It must be because they had multiple writers, or at least editors. Gerontocracy. Interesting. Elders preside over this society. In some cases, long-lived races such as elves or dragons are entrusted with the leadership of the land. That's a cool fucking setting. A gerontocracy, like a geriatric. I think that's where it comes from. Geriatric, geron. I think that's the name. So elders preside over the society. That's very similar, or is similar, to the Republic, where the philosopher kings, the philosophers are the ones who preside over society. And to be a philosopher, you have to be at least, I think, 50 years old as a human. So, you know, you're like, nowadays, you'd be like in your 60s. And it's not just about age. It's about the fact that you have dedicated your life to scholarly learning, to metaphysics, to philosophy, to learning. So I think that would be. I mean, that's not what they're going for here. But if you want a real gerontocracy, the whole point of having the elders preside over stuff is that they have wisdom, because they've lived and experienced things. So, for example, having a dragon or an elf who's 100 years old, they're not old, right? Just because they've been, you see what I'm saying? Like, you kind of have to think more about it than, there's just a dragon. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. Hierarchy. A feudal or bureaucratic government where every member except one is subordinate to another member. In the Dragonlance campaign setting, the dragon armies of Kirn form a military hierarchy, with the dragon high lords as leaders under the dragon queen Takisis. That's kind of stupid. All of these societies have hierarchy. I don't think that's a very good. I mean, unless you know the setting, maybe it makes sense. But then it's just a military or a militocracy. Kleptocracy. This government is composed of groups or individuals primarily seeking wealth for themselves, often at the expense of their subjects. In capitalism? That sounds a lot like capitalism. The grasping bandit kingdoms in the Greyhawk campaign setting are prime examples. No pun intended. A kingdom run by thieves' guilds would also fall into this category. I mean, it's a corporate-ocracy. You have rules and laws for the people because happy people make better workers. I mean, come on. All right, whatever. It's a kleptocracy. Mageocracy. The governing body is composed of spellcasters who rule directly as oligarchs, which they should have just had oligarchy in. Oh, they do. Oligarchs are feudal lords or participate in a democracy or bureaucracy. Examples include the Red Wizards of Thay in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting, and the Sorcerer Kings of Athos in the Dark Sun campaign setting. That just sounds cool, Sorcerer Kings. Again, I think they're being just pedantic. You don't need all this. You could have like 4. Matriarchy or patriarchy? Nobody wants that patriarchy, and it don't exist. This society is governed by the eldest or most important members of one gender, because there's only one. Drow cities are examples of theocratic matriarchies. For each is ruled by a council of drow high priestesses who answer to Lolth, the demon queen of spiders. First of all, they don't know she's a demon. It's interesting. It's obvious to put the drow in there because they are a matriarchy. It is interesting. I kind of get it. I think it would be... I mean, they're plugging their own material. It'd be better to pull something out of Star Trek. Granted, people that play D&D, they might not know Star Trek, but there are plenty of matriarchies in Star Trek that are fabulously productive and don't worship a demon queen. All right. Meritocracy. Also, it's just a bad... I mean, I get what they're saying. The eldest are the most important members of one gender. Anyway. Meritocracy. The most intelligent and educated people oversee the society, often with a bureaucracy to handle the day-to-day work of government, because you have to have that. In the Forgotten Realms, scholarly monks preside over the fortress library of Candle Keep, overseen by a master of lore called the Keeper. Meritocracy, the most intelligent and educated people. That is not what a meritocracy is. I'll look it up really quick. Meritocracy. I'm pretty sure a meritocracy is like all this shit's discussed in the 19th century. Pretty sure. And early 20th century. An idea of meritocracy is based on your merit, as in, have you done good shit for society? You have a higher standing. You get better shit if you do better. I think that's a meritocracy, but maybe I'm wrong. Meritocracy, a system in which advancement is based on individual ability or achievement. A group of leaders or office holders selected on the base of individual ability or achievement. The most intelligent and educated people oversees the society is not a meritocracy. That is a gerontocracy. I mean, it's saying gerontocracy being the elders, but they've conflated things. They've made a gerontocracy as the only elders provide of society. That's like the chief of a Native American clan being the ruler by dint of them being older, but they're not. That's just I don't even know what that's called. Because it's not feudalism. It's a bit of a patriarchy. Because it's all about one line. I don't know what that's called. Anyway, meritocracy is not this. Militocracy. Military leaders run the nation under military law using the military and other armed forces. The militocracy might be based on an elite group of soldiers, an old order of dragon riders, or a league of sea princes. Salamnia, a nation ruled by the knights in the Dragonlance campaign setting, falls into this category. Usually there's a generalissimo. A dictator is militocracy often. Monarchy. A single hereditary sovereign wears the crown. Unlike the autocrat, the monarch's powers are limited by law. Okay, yeah. And the ruler serves as the head of democracy, or the head of a democracy, feudal state, or militocracy. The kingdom of Breland in the Eberron campaign setting has both a parliament that makes laws and a monarch who enforces them. Again, they're conflating things, or they're separating things that should be conflated. A monarchy just means there's one ruler, a king or a queen, or the regent, or whatever. And how they rule, it could be one of these forms of government. Britain is a monarchy, but they also have a parliament. Okay, I digress. Oligarchy. A small number of absolute rulers share power, possibly dividing the land into districts or provinces under their control or jointly ruling together. A group of adventurers who take control of a nation together might form an oligarchy. The free city of Greyhawk is an oligarchy composed of various faction leaders with a Lord Mayor as its figurehead. So an oligarchy can be many things, one of which is a communist government. Cheers. But as I presume Americans wrote this, that's a bad word. No, I'm not promoting communism whatsoever. I think communism is great on paper until the last, 5 pages of the book of the Communist Manifesto. And then you're like, whoa, oh, shit. You got crazy. But leading up to then, it's like a bunch of 20, 30-somethings. We're like, no, this is the way it should be. Oligarchy. Small number of absolute rulers share power. Holy shit, to have a group of adventurers in that position. Lord. It's literally hell on earth. Plutocracy. A plutocrat. I didn't know this. Society is governed by the wealthy. The elite form a ruling council, purchase representation at the court of a figurehead monarch, or rule by default because money is the true power in the realm. Many cities in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting, including Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate, are plutocracies. Again, that sounds a lot like what happens in absolute capitalism, but I feel like this might be wrong just because it says Pluto, but I don't actually know. No, it is. So that is completely correct. Republic. Government is entrusted to representatives of an established electorate who rule on behalf of the electors. Any democracy in which only landowners or certain classes can vote could be considered a republic. So you have a Senate, Rome. The Republic of Rome. Interesting. Satrapy. Satrapy. I've never heard of this word. That's cool. Satrapy. Satrapy. So satrapy. Conquerors and representatives of another government wield power, ruling the settlement or region as part of a larger empire. The satraps are bureaucrats and military officers or unusual characters or monsters. The cities of Highport and Suderham in the Greyhawk campaign setting are satrapies controlled by agents of a vicious gang of marauders known as the Slave Lords. Not very creative. So satrapy is actually a nation-state territory or area controlled as if by a satrap. The territory or sphere under the rule of a satrap. So what's a satrap? A satrap was a governor of the provinces of the ancient Median and Achaemenid empires, and in several of their successors, such as the Sasanian Empire and the Hellenistic empires. So they're viceroys to the king. Kind of reminds me of the Roman states. Interesting. Theocracy. Rulership falls to a direct representative or a collection of agents of a deity. The centers of power in a theocracy are usually located on sacred sites. In the Eberron campaign setting, the nation of Thrain is a theocracy devoted to the Silver Flame, a divine spirit that resides in Thrain's capital of Flamekeep. Okay, That's pretty interesting. I think it's interesting. Getting back to the chat really quick. Sorry, it's taking me a minute. Chad says, I found out that they're putting out 5.5, and right now you can get the PDF and take a survey about what you think. Like some kind of alpha test could be a good stream. Thank you, Chad. You are correct. That's a great fucking idea. You know I'm going to hate it. He also says, also, we are a confederation. No one likes to admit it. We are. I mean, it's the United States, like, that is a confederacy. Or were you a union of states as well? You know, a confederacy or a union. Or we're based in that. The bigger the federal government gets, the less true that is. But, well, actually I retract that. That's really not the less true it is. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you. We're supposed to have semi-autonomous states. And we do, as evidenced by what's just gone down in the Supreme Court, which can be very awesome for people, and it can also be very shitty for people. So yeah. All right. Commerce. Even small villages can provide characters access to the gear they need to pursue their adventures. Provisions, tents, backpacks, and simple weapons are commonly available. Traveling merchants carry armor, martial weapons, and more specialized gear. And they get raided by your murder hobo and PCs. Most villages have inns that cater to travelers, where adventurers can find a hot meal and a bed, even if the quality leaves much to be desired. I mean, they live on the road, man. You know? The High Lung concert in Minnesota is about to blow up, by the way, in a good way. Let's see. Yep. I'm getting not yelled at, but told. So I was gonna game tonight. I was trying to game tonight, but no one was answering. So I was like, well, fuck it. I'll rant online. And I'm being told that that's funny. It is funny. Let's see. Okay. You know, anyone who has opinions about what I'm saying, go ahead and leave them in the chat. Blow me up. Do it. Let's see. Where was I? Villages rely heavily on trade with other settlements, including larger towns and cities. Merchants pass through regularly, selling necessities and luxuries to the villagers, and any successful merchant has far-reaching contacts across the region. Traveling merchants pass on gossip and adventure hooks to the characters as they conduct their business. Again, this seems very uninspired, this writing. Since merchants make their living traversing roads that might be menaced by bandits or wandering monsters, they hire guards to keep their goods safe. They also carry news from town to town, including reports of situations that cry out for the attention of adventurers. Like, that's one paragraph. You don't need to write that. I think people were getting paid to write different parts of this book. And they needed so many words, so they made so many words. These merchants can't provide the services normally found in a city. For instance, when the characters are in need of a library or a dedicated sage, a trainer who can handle the griffin eggs they found, or an architect to design their castle, they're better off going to a large city than looking in a village. Okay. Currency. This, I think, might be interesting. The straightforward terms, gold piece, silver piece, copper piece, electrum piece, boo, and platinum piece, are used throughout the game rules for clarity. Thanks, D&D. You can imbue these denominations with more interesting descriptions in your game world. Why the fuck would you do that? Like, it's so niche. Then again, if somebody's really into currency, I guess it makes sense. I'm a linguophile, so I'm really into like, writing fucking Norse fucking Elder Futhark puzzles. So, in Tangwar, all of my players in Richmond Fay, like literally all of them can read like 25 to 50% Tangwar because all the puzzles are in Tangwar. So I kind of get it. People give coins specific names, whether as plain as dime or as lively as gold double eagle. A country typically mints its own currency, which might correspond to the basic rules terms. In most worlds, few currencies achieve widespread distribution, but nearly all coins are accepted worldwide, except by those looking to pick a fight with a foreigner. No. I mean, if you're going to have currency in the game that matters, then it should follow the basic rules of currency, which are, what's it made of? Or is it like is it just symbolic? Or what is it made of? So you have currency, so you don't have to barter. Bartering always works, right? And that really is the currency in towns and shit. Or your coinage has to be worth something. So the reason a gold piece is worth anything is because it's gold, not because it has an emblem on it. And if your notes are just emblems, like most countries nowadays, or maybe all countries, I don't know, then it's the value of your currency has to do with the strength and the stability of the nation it was coined by. Like bottle caps in Fallout or whatever. Yeah, I just used that because it popped in my head, but honestly, I don't know a lot about Fallout. And I don't know why it is that bottle caps have any value. Unless they just agreed on it. Chad says, I do like using different currencies, so there's change houses. Oh, so there's change houses, right. I think mundane, everyday institutions can give a setting some life. Yeah, well, you're wrong. No. No, you're right. You're right. It's an interesting idea. Like, I think that's where I was going with this, is you have to make a decision as a DM. Is currency a thing? And what I mean by that is something like, is language a thing? Like, if language is a thing, then language has to matter in the game. And that means that players have to be able to acquire it, because when they acquire it, and it costs something to do that, it matters. It has a value. So currency has to be that way. Like, who gives a flying shit if my gold coin looks like yours? Unless it does matter, right? If it does matter, then that currency has a value. So, for example, if you take an American dollar, well, that's actually not a good example. Sure it is. If you can take an American dollar to England and you try to pay for shit with it, you're probably not going to be able to. If you take a British pound and bring it here, you're not going to be able to buy shit. Because we can't use it. It has value, but you got to go to, like Chad said, a change house. So there's this tax to change the money. There's this idea of government control, of knowing where that money comes from. Why is a king's emblem or a queen's emblem printed on the money? Well, it has to do with taxes. It has to do with, hey, you've better be using printed money or else you're going to get in trouble. And that's got to matter in the campaign. It's got to matter in the adventure, or it doesn't matter. And it can be anecdotal and kind of fun, but what will happen in the player group if there's not a reason for it, like if there literally isn't a value other than flair, it ends up getting thrown to the wayside like the NPC that doesn't matter. And is a bit of a waste of time. Okay. Let's see. Give me 1 second. My friend has come in. This is live and online, by the way. You can shut that down with you. Holker's here. Say hi, Holker.
Hi, Holker.
You look like a hobbit because of forced perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a complete difference from the Richmond Fae. Yeah. Holker plays... go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Daniel Holker.
You gotta speak up.
My name is Daniel Holker. I play in Will's Monday night game that he streams all over the internet.
All over the internet's face.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he plays Murad Hatun. Right, so I'm reading the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's pretty bad. Some of it's okay, but some of it's terrible. I just went through the forms of government, and several of them are wrong. Okay, so I'm at currency right now. Chad says, so he says he likes using different currency because of the change houses, and it gives the setting some life. That's how I gave the dwarfs value in the town of Saltmarsh. They were the change house bank instead of just an office that didn't have shit. Right. So the dwarfs there have a purpose, and they're trusted because they're dwarves, and that's what dwarves do. Yeah, it makes sense. That kind of thing, I think, adds flavor to it. You don't have to really dig down too much into it. Okay. Example: the Forgotten Realms. They love the fucking Forgotten Realms. The world of the Forgotten Realms provides an extensive example of currencies. Although barter, blood notes, and similar letters of trade are common enough in Faerun, metal coins and trade bars are the everyday currency. Common coinage. Coins appear in a bewildering variety of shapes, sizes, names, and materials. Thanks to the ambitious traders of Sembia, that nation's oddly shaped coins can be found throughout Faerun. In Sembia, square iron steel pence replace copper coins. Triangular silver pieces are ravens. Diamond-shaped electrum pieces are harmarks, commonly called blue eyes. And five-sided gold pieces are nobles. Sembia doesn't mint platinum coins. All coinage is accepted in Sembia, including copper and platinum pieces from abroad. So in practice, you're just going to fucking use gold pieces. I mean, again, it's cool flavor text, but that's all it is. It's flavor text. And in practice, playing a game, running a game, it takes so much energy to remember to call them old blue eyes, then, well, how many gold is it? And also you got to do the math in your head, which is not difficult math, but it's a big old bitch, which is why people don't use Electrum. Yes, Electrum is cool, but if you're actually going to count up what it's worth, and you're actually going to keep an inventory, it's just it almost always gets pushed off to gold pieces. As in, D&D is the gold standard, like almost just period. You could make it something else, but you got to be real consistent with it.
You know how paper currency arose?
Tell us.
Apparently, paper currency arose where people would have their gold, right? They give it to banks or just places to store it, right? And the banks would give them receipts. They'd have these paper receipts, and so they'd have these carrying them around. And so when people would want gold or some equivalent, they would say, I got this receipt from this bank that stores people's gold. Well, here's a receipt from mine, and they take that.
So it is literally a banknote.
It's my understanding, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and dollar bills are far easier to carry than a big bag of coins.
Yep.
All right. In Waterdeep, the bustling cosmopolitan center of trade, coppers are called nibs. Silvers are shards. That's kind of funny. Why is it funny? Because it sounds like shart. That's why. Electrum pieces are moons, gold pieces are dragons, and platinum pieces are suns. That's kind of cool. But again, it's flavor text. The city's 2 local coins are the toll and the harbor moon. The toll is a square brass trading coin pierced with a central hole to permit it to be easily strung on a ring or string, worth 2 gold pieces in the city and nothing outside Waterdeep. Kind of like a... reminds me of Japanese money. Or no, Chinese money. They used to have a hole in the middle. The harbor moon is a flat crescent of platinum with a central hole and an electrum inlay, named for its traditional use in the docks for buying large amounts of cargo at once. The coin is worth 50 gold pieces in Waterdeep and 30 elsewhere. Again, it goes down to gold pieces. Like, yes, this is cool as shit. It's cool lore. It makes sense. But unless you are absolutely consistent, it all goes down to gold. It's like, cool, right. How much gold is that? It's like, oh, you have like 15 dragon gems. Ugh. What can you do with them? Oh, you could buy a boat. Oh, awesome. 1 dragon gem is, you can buy a boat with it. Great. So how much gold is that? Which is hilarious because gold is, like in D&D, gold is completely arbitrary.
I feel like that's what the characters, though, in that real setting would do.
Absolutely.
They would say, oh, we've got all these people from all these different lands. Hey, gold is accepted most everywhere. Well, we're just going to use gold, or we're at least going to know what the gold equivalent price of everything is.
What is the gold standard? Right. Exactly. That's the thing. And the only time that becomes fun is when you're like, cool, how much gold is it? And you find out. And it's a lot. Or when you're like, great, well, everybody digs on gold except that one country that somehow looks like China, but we're not going to call it China. And they use silver. And their silver is their gold, and their gold is their silver. So you're like, I have 1,000 gold, and they're great, so that's like 100.
There's what I think there are ways you could incorporate currency into the storyline.
But you have to be consistent.
But let me throw something else. Back in, I think, Roman times, and this probably continued as long as they were actually using gold coins, what they would do is when, say, the central court was trying to finance wars, they would take the coins and they would shave off the outside or clip them.
Oh,
just a little bit, right? And they would do this for every coin that they came across. And then they would take all those shavings, melt them down to make new coins, so they could pay all these soldiers that are off doing who knows what. And these coins, eventually people would kind of catch on.
Right.
That, oh, there's not as much gold or silver in this as you
coins.
think because you're diluting it. And people would do the same thing with, say, mixed content coins.
Well, that's what Electrum is. Electrum is silver and gold mixed. And that's the reason you don't want to use it in-game, because you never know if it's an equal part.
I feel like, though, you could use that to your advantage in a storyline and say, oh, yeah, you got Electrum. You could use it, but this merchant might kill you, or might roll initiative as a result because of their experience with
Yeah, nobody uses it, or no one that I've gamed with has used Electrum.
That's how I would approach it.
Save for Chad, and it was done very well because it was more like, oh, these are cool Electrum ingots, and we're gonna have them changed, and then it's all gonna go to gold, or to something worthwhile like goods and services and stuff. But I think it'd be kind of interesting, instead of just to avoid Electrum. Electrum was what shaved pieces were called. Like shaved gold is, oh, that's Electrum. Oh, that's shitty gold. It's fool's gold, or whatever you want to call it. At any rate, so long as you're consistent with it, it's fine. But if you're not consistent, you might as well just fucking call it gold and silver. Or call it dollars. Remember I had this one guy who used to play with us. He would play every so often. And instead of calling it gold, he just called them dollars. He'd be like, oh, how many dollars is that? I'm like, it's fucking gold, dude. He's like, oh, right. So it's like $50. All right, we're gonna finish up this to languages and dialects, and then we'll be done for today. One last bit. I agree with you. It would be an awesome campaign idea, but it would have to be a fundamental idea to the setting. Right? That's a plot. Now, the northern city of Silver Moon mints a crescent-shaped shining blue coin called an Electrum Moon. Okay, I'm actually going to skip down here. Because this is just giving... Well, there's something interesting here. Even city-states mint their own copper, silver, and gold pieces. Electrum and platinum pieces are rarer in these lands. Smaller states use coinage borrowed from other nations and looted from ancient sources. Travelers from certain lands, notably the wizard-dominated realms of Thay and Halrua, use the currencies of other realms in trading abroad because their own coins and tokens are feared to be magically cursed and so are shunned by others. Interesting. But that means coinage matters. Like, those credits won't work here. We're in the fucking outer rim. Conversely, the coins of long-lost legendary lands and centers of great magic are honored, though those who find them are wise to sell them to collectors rather than merely spending them in markets. The coins of the old elven court of Cormanthur are particularly famous. Thalvers, Bedars, Thamarks, Shimlairs, and Randus. These coins are fine, numerous, and sometimes still used in trade among elves. Again, those are different names for copper, silver, electrum, gold, and platinum. It's just a fucked up name for... People are just going to say gold. Which, again, it's kind of cool flavor text. But you get bored of it, and you're like, right, how much gold? Trade bars. A large number of coins can be difficult to transport and account for. Many merchants prefer to use trade bars, ingots of precious metals and alloys, usually silver, likely to be accepted by virtually anyone. Trade bars are stamped or graven with the symbol of the trading company or government that originally crafted them. These bars are valued by weight, as follows. This is cool to reference. It's kind of worthless, in my opinion. There's a pun here. A 2-pound silver bar is worth 10 gold and is about 5 inches long, 2 inches wide, and 1.5 inch thick. So it's a bar of silver and it's 10 gold. That's it. That's all anyone cares about. A 5-pound silver bar is worth 25 gold, and it's bigger. A 5-pound gold bar is worth 250 gold, and is about the size of a 2-pound silver bar. This is kind of back into the second edition stuff where it's like, great, that's awesome. But if you're like really getting down and dirty and like, all right, how much gold can fit into this box? It's cool to reference. I actually just did this for the Richmond Fay game. But anyway, the city of Baldur's Gate mints large numbers of people of silver trade bars and sets the standard for this form of currency. The city of Mirabar issues black iron, spindle-shaped trade bars with squared ends weighing about 2 pounds each, worth 10 gold in that city, markedly less in nearby trade centers, and as iron is normally valued elsewhere, 1 silver piece per pound. Like, odd currency. Coins and bars aren't the only forms of hard currency. You want to get hard?
No.
Currency? Gond bells are small brass bells worth 10 gold in trade, or 20 gold to a temple of Gond. Shar rings, pierced and polished slices of ivory, threaded onto strings by the nomads of Shar, are worth 3 gold piece per slice. Creating your own. As shown in the previous examples, currency's some bullshit. Doesn't need to obey a universal standard in your world. Each country and era can have its own coins with its own values. Your adventurers might travel through many different lands and find long-lost treasures. Finding 600 ancient Bedowers from the rule of Coronel Eltergrim 12 centuries before offers a deeper sense of immersion in your world than finding 60 silver pieces. I mean, if you go to fucking Coronel Eltergrim from 12 centuries before, loot that bitch, come back and you're like, how much is it? And they're like, 60 silver. Here's your 6 fucking gold. Varying names and descriptions of coins for your major contemporary and historical realms of the world adds an additional layer of texture. The golden lions of Harmre convey the noble nature of that kingdom. If a nation mints gold coins stamped with leering demonic faces and called torments, that currency expresses a distinct flavor. That's actually kind of cool. Well, how many torments you got? 6. Buy me a couple rounds. Creating new coins connected to specific locations, like the tolls of Rotterdam or the eclipsed moons of Silvery Moon, provides another level of detail as long as you keep the value of these coins simple. In other words, don't invent a coin worth 1.62 gold pieces. You add local flavor to key locations in your world without adding undue complexity. I disagree wholeheartedly with this. Last paragraph, languages and dialects. When fleshing out your world, you can create new languages and dialects to reflect its unique geography and history. Real quick, the chat. That's how I gave the dwarves value in the town of Saltmarsh. They were the change house bank instead of just an office that didn't have anything. You're right that it's useless unless it matters. If you're not using encumbrance, what's the point? Agreed. Like, that's one of the issues we faced in Richmond Fae, is if a player has like 13 weapons on their back, I mean, you're playing a video game at that point. You know? Okay. You can replace the default languages presented in the PHB with new ones. Why would you do that? Or split languages into several different dialects. In some worlds, regional differences might be much more important than racial ones. Perhaps all the dwarves, elves, and humans who live in one kingdom speak a common language, which honestly makes more sense, which is completely different from that spoken in the neighboring kingdom. This might make communication and diplomacy between two kingdoms significantly more difficult. I do understand why they made racial languages, because it's agnostic of the setting. Widely used languages might have ancient versions, or there might be completely different ancient tongues that adventurers find in written tombs, and ruins. Such languages can add an element of mystery to inscriptions and tomes that characters encounter. You might invent additional secret languages besides Druidic and Thieves' Cant that allow members of certain organizations or political affiliations to communicate. You could even decide that each alignment has its own language, which might be more of an argot used primarily to discuss philosophical concepts. Is this argot or argot? Argot. I actually don't know that word. In a region where one race has subjugated another, the language of the conquerors can become a mark of social status. Very cool. Similarly, very cool idea in a story, I should say. Similarly, reading and writing might be restricted by law to the upper classes of a society. And that is all about languages and dialects. So we got to page 21. All right. Chad, thank you for being on the chat. Jacob, for being on the chat. Nikki, thanks for jumping on. And Nigel, for at least knowing that we're on. I'll do this again because I would like to get a little bit more a little bit further through the DMG. I know one reads it. Holker, thanks for showing up.
No problem.
All right, ladies and gents, that's us. If you have any comments for how we can do better on the audio and the video, what did you think about seeing the book out there? Can you actually read it at this resolution? I don't know. How's the sound? Blah. Also, for anyone who is not my friend and is watching it, There is a Patreon. It's patreon.com/dreadlore. And it should be in the link and all that shit. It'd help me improve the stream because I can buy a stream deck, which is what I'm trying to get. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, real quick. Richmond Fay, the D&D 5th edition game that we stream, is every Monday at around 7:15 Eastern Standard.